Tell me when. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the Board of Selectmen meeting of 25 March. Today we continue on the path toward town meeting. Be discussing a number of topics that we've covered earlier, but we're just moving along on budget, warrant articles. As well, we've got some staff actions to discuss and some projects to include the fire and ambulance merger, backfilling for the building inspector and zoning enforcement officer position. We're going to talk about strategy for the water transmission line, some issues, contract issues with respect to the town hall garage. We'll have some initial discussion about water and sewer rates. We have some issues there. And in addition, we have a group here to give a report on the center school reuse study. Before we begin, this month is March for Meals month. It's a campaign sponsored by the Meals on Wheels Association. And this past week I had an opportunity to ride with the gentleman who delivered meals here to the town hall for the congregate meal program, as well as to individual homes throughout the community, and clearly it reinforced the need. And it's interesting, just a personal observation, it's not just about nutrition. For example, the first home we came to, the driver mentioned to me that just a very short time ago we found a gentleman who lived there alone on the floor and couldn't get up, and was able to call in some help. So it's, in addition to nutrition, it's also kind of a wellness check, and also a social check. You could tell some of these folks didn't have very many visitors. So an excellent program, supported here in town, and I thought it would be helpful as part of this if we had just a little bit of information, a reminder to folks about eligibility for the program, what programs we have here in Hatfield. And Cookie from the Council on Aging is here to say a few words about that. Come up to the microphone. No, just come up to the microphone.
Okay. My name is Amanda Zygmunt, as Jeff said, Cookie. In addition to being chairperson on Council on Aging Board, I also work in the Council on Aging office. On behalf of Jane Betzold, our director, who has a voice problem, I'm here to talk about our congregate meals and our home-delivered meals. And excuse me if I wrote something up, but sometimes the mind doesn't remember everything. So I'm here to remind residents age 60 and over of two programs available to them in Hatfield. Congregate meals and Meals on Wheels are provided by Highland Valley Elder Services, prepared at the Walter Salvo House in Northampton, and delivered to 24 communities in Hampshire County at noontime. The purpose of these programs is to provide a nutritionally balanced meal, complete with the main meal, dessert, bread, and milk. Participants pay for the meal by making an anonymous contribution, whatever amount they can afford, to defray the cost of the meal. The congregate meals is held at the Council on Aging Center downstairs in the town hall, Monday through Friday, no holidays, no weekends. Meals on Wheels program, as Jeff had mentioned earlier, is delivered Monday through Friday to homebound residents unable to attend congregate meals. They are available upon request with the home delivered meal. There is also a light evening meal provided if one is needed. Meals on Wheels are delivered by volunteer drivers who not only deliver a meal, but, as Jeff mentioned earlier, provide a social contact with homebound seniors and a well-being check for those who have had no family visit with them recently or daily. It's not just a meal they are receiving. If anyone needs more information or is interested in either of these programs, please call the Hatfield Council on Aging at 247-9003. Reservations for our noontime meals must be made in advance. Highland Valley Elder Services is sponsoring its first annual walkathon to raise money to support the Meals on Wheels program. Jeff had mentioned that earlier. The, quote, "We are Meals on Wheels so no senior goes hungry," unquote, event will be held Saturday, May 17th from 8:30 to noon at the Northampton High School. Registration starts at 8:30. The walk begins at 10 rain or shine, so dress accordingly. Refreshments and activities will be available. Please support the Meals on Wheels program and get involved in your community. Thank you.
Thank you, Cookie. Anyone else have any announcements? We have the minutes of 11th March.
Move we accept minutes.
Before we have the motion to accept, are there any changes?
I do. I have one that's in here on page 3.
Okay.
Okay, unanticipated new business. First paragraph, it should say, Selectman Lesko announced to the residents that the police cruiser, when seen out of town, is on official business.
Right, okay.
Should be is in there.
Then on the first page, under Transportation Bond Bill, second line, that was me, not the town administrator, talking with Representative Colcott and Senator Rosenberg's staff. Just any other changes?
No.
All right, subject to those changes, is there a motion to accept the minutes of 11 March?
Move we accept it with the 2 corrections.
Second.
Okay. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. First order of business, Center School reuse study. Just kind of set the stage. Recall, we've had a number of goes at this. Some years ago, there was a proposal to sell the former center school. Town meeting decided that was not the course they chose. We came back with a proposal to use it for municipal purposes. Town meeting chose not to do that. We came back and town meeting said try and lease it. We tried that option, had one responsive bidder who subsequently backed out because of cost, and they needed to expand the facility. It wasn't quite large enough for their needs. So we were fortunate enough to get a grant to take another look, get an outside objective look, professional look at what are the potential options and what might be the facility costs associated with preparing the building for the recommended uses. And today we have not a decision brief, but a presentation on kind of where things stand, and have a group here ready to make a presentation. Linda, do you want to introduce your group?
Yes, John Wilkes is not here. Bob Bartlett is not here. Betty Parada is on the committee. Stanley Szymanski, Buster, and myself. We also have Jim Mozick, who is from Pioneer Valley Planning, that comes to our meetings. And we've had several meetings up to this point. We had a meeting with the consultants to go over the report that they presented to us. We talked about the condition of the building, what the options were, what the town of Hatfield is like. And we are an aging community. We're not shrinking, we're growing. We talked about whether the school needed extra space, the town hall needed extra space. We talked about the library, which they chose not to come in because they're looking for an addition on their building. We talked about housing. We talked about what was not good for the building across the street. The building is in good shape for its age, but there are things that are starting to happen that need to be addressed, or it's going to get worse. We talked about what some business people, whether they wanted to buy the building or they would be interested in buying with the town owning the building and having a building in land lease. There are some issues there with load-bearing walls, so dividing the building up, I guess, would be a problem, but I'm sure, with architects today, almost anything's possible. So one of the things was that we all seem to not want to sell the building. We would like to be able to keep it if we could. So they are interviewing, the firm is interviewing different people in town to see what they were looking for. And that's just about it, unless you have something to add.
Would you like to introduce your consultant group?
It's AJ,
It doesn't have to be started.
okay, I don't have his last name written down. Don Hafner from HAI, the firm that we we hired or suggested that you go into contract with. And this is Maura Cochran. So I will let him take over and tell you what we found and go over the report with you.
I'm Don Hafner from HA Architecture, and presenting with us today is Jeannot Bly, Patrick Domanov, and Mara Cochran from Barsham and Cochran. We've prepared a progress report for you, and we're going to leave Paul with some copies of the report that he can distribute amongst the committee or the selectmen. Today, what we're going to do is cover with you the extent to which we have progressed on the study. We're going to start by telling you a little bit about the building and site evaluation, which is the first part of the study, and then we're going to have Mara come up and recap some of the marketing and economic development issues that we have pursued as the project has gone on.
Great. Okay.
Need to take a break?
Want to kill that light so we can see the slide?
Hello?
Well, probably need some light here for John. John, do you need light?
No, I can see the screen.
Put the light on the back.
Okay.
Is
Yeah.
there more like that for that?
Hi, good morning.
Sure.
Jeannot Bly from HAI Architecture. I believe we're going to have maybe about an hour presentation, if that's
Fine.
okay. I'm going to spend about 10-15 minutes and go through the condition of the building itself as it exists, and then Maura will go through the marketing analysis. We're about 2.5 months into the process of this project, and we have about 3 months to go. So we wanted to get input on directing the final phase of our work so that we could really focus the solutions on specific potential uses for the building that would be acceptable to the committee and the town and the Board of Selectmen, so that the work could be as productive in actually developing a solution that will finally make the building a viable economic source for the town. The building is 100 years old this year. It was built in 1914. It's Jacobean Revival architecture. It's a beautiful building. Architecturally, it's really a jewel for the town. It's a very valuable asset, and it's something that probably is unlikely to ever be replaced. But we're at the tipping point now where, even though the building it was solidly built and it's in fairly good condition, it's deteriorating in many aspects, and it's beyond the point of maintenance or minor repairs that can cope with the deterioration. And there's a significant investment that needs to be made in order to really preserve the building and prevent it from deteriorating further. It's been vacant since it was the Western Mass Regional Library 10 years ago, the fall of 2004, and there's been really very little upkeep for the building, and it's actually unheated, and it's fairly cold, especially this winter. It was. The site's been covered since the beginning of our project with a good amount of snow and ice pack, and we're finally able to get a good look at the property, and this is a work in progress. This is a draft update of our report. We expect it to continue to be refined. I'll start to run through the As you know, there are playing fields in the back used by the school. There's a field hockey field, and then the rec department, the rec committee has a baseball field for Little League. You have a earthwork around the sides of the property with the river, and it kind of tapers off on the north side of the property for flood control. Beginning with the building envelope, the roof system itself is original slate tiles, and many of them, as you can see, are cracked or broken. There's been various repairs done over time. There's been repairs done to flashing. You can see in a lot of areas that a lot of the flashing has pulled apart or is actually missing entirely. And when you're in the attic, you can actually see light through many areas through the roof. The original nails that are holding the tiles in place are likely copper. They have a 50-year lifespan. We're at 100 years now. The tiles themselves, they thin over time until they become too brittle to be repaired. And again, we're at 100 years for many of those tiles. And the thinness at its current state is at a critical point, so that our recommendation would be that the roof has to be replaced. And everything has to be reflashed with all of the building elements of the gables and the cupolas and the vents and all that, the hips and the rafters. There are two dormers on the east side of the building. Again, those would have to be, there is slate on the sides of the dormers and on the roof that all needs to be replaced. The wood throughout the building, where we still have original wood windows, are very solid. They do need to all be refinished, stripped down and repainted. The dormers, most of the glass is broken, and there's plywood in the windows so that the light is not getting into the attic space. The gable parapets themselves, there's a lot of open joints and temporary repairs that have been done over time. There's some deterioration of some of the capstones, and it has gotten into the masonry walls below the capstones. So we would recommend, again, that those all be removed, reflashed, and reset. The overhang throughout the building, there are sections of it that are still okay, but then you see that there's other areas where there's actually boards missing. There's rot in certain areas in the valley areas. There's no gutter system or downspouts on the building. Everything just falls off the building and actually creates a water issue at the basement. The chimneys need to be repointed as well, and there's been, as you see, attempts at repair work with the flashing, but all the flashing needs to be redone along with the roof. The capstones are concrete, and they have significant cracks. Some of the minor cracks have been repaired over time, but there's still some major cracks through the center of each capstone. The cupola itself, there's an active pigeon population, as you can see. If you go inside the cupola, there's a significant amount of fecal matter from a long period of time, as well as dead carcasses from the birds. So it, what's that?
The last active pigeon.
Yeah. Again, some of the wood is very solid, and we believe the cupola can be saved. Ideally, it would be removed with a crane, restored, and then put back on the building. The masonry, you see that under a lot of the sills, there's a significant amount of water issue there. Some repointing has been done over time in different areas of the building, but some of the mortar that was used was not appropriate to the brick type or the hardness of the existing mortar, and has actually created some other issues as well. You can see cracks in the brick near the base of the foundation. It has a brick foundation wall. And as there's no rain strip around the building, there's a significant amount of water that gets onto the sides of the base of the walls. Limestone accents, you see that there is a significant amount of deterioration for some of the pieces, and especially where there's water coming down from the roof that is getting onto the walls that has created some of the pieces to deteriorate. Windows on the west side facing here, mostly original windows, double-hung windows, some fixed on the projected sections of the building. The windows really just need to be refinished and repainted. They're fairly solid from the original. Some of the windows on there, or most of the windows on the east side of the building have the original frames that are still in place, but they have 20 to 30-year-old aluminum replacement sashes that would need to be replaced. The entrance doors are fully rotted on the building. We even had difficulty getting into the building or using the side door. The doors at the basement level on the back are all rotted out. There are some original windows on the basement level, though, that can be restored. There are the aluminum storefronts at the stair exits on either end, on the north and south ends of the building, that are in good condition. On the windows on the east side, and there's 25 to 30 foot long strips of metal that have been placed over whatever the existing construction was that is rusting and needs to be removed to see what the condition was underneath that was trying to be covered up, to see what other additional repair work needs to be done. And then there's a shed building on the east side that would need to be removed, most likely in most development options. In the attic, it's an unheated, unfinished space, which has a significant amount of structure, making it unusable for any occupancy. And there has been, at some point, probably in the 50 to 60 year range, some steel reinforcement that was added to tie in the exterior walls, but there's still not the proper connections for current code uses for seismic or other reinforcement of the rafters. The interior of the building, it still retains much of the original construction. It has the main nearly 12-foot wide corridor running the full length of the building on this side, on the west side, and then 4 classrooms running consecutively down the hallway with a stair at either end. And both the second and third, the first and second floors are the same layout. Much of the original wood flooring, the plaster, the wood trim, and the chalkboards are still all in place. Although some of the rooms have carpeting that have been laid over the wood floors. Much of the wood flooring is savable but needs to be refinished. There's a bit of damage in some of the plaster ceilings and walls on the east side. It's not extensive throughout. You can see the terracotta block behind where some of the chalkboards have been removed. That the terracotta is the wall construction within the building. These are the hallways that are between the classrooms that were used for coats. Structure, it's a wood frame structure within the building. There's a steel beam with 2x8 floor construction, and the exterior masonry wall is load bearing to the roof. These are all of the alterations that would be necessary, triggered by renovation of the building for structural, to meet structural code.
Can I ask one quick question? You mentioned the seismic in the attic. What about, what seismic zone are we in?
There needs to be a soil boring test done in order to determine the specific seismic class that we would be required.
Because I thought you needed something in the basement as well on the foundation. Never mind. That's all right, go ahead.
As far as mechanical, electrical, and plumbing systems, basically overall, nothing that's in the building is reusable. It doesn't meet, it's beyond its life expectancy now. None of it meets ADA requirements as far as plumbing or energy code requirements. The ventilation system, you see there's plywood infills on the east side of the building where air was brought into the ventilation system. Those are all blocked in now. There were shafts going up the building to a gravity ventilator into the cupola, which is no longer functional. The only means of ventilating the building now are opening the windows. It's a steam piping system to a boiler, oil tanks in the basement. There's 4 oil tanks. Recommendation would be most likely to convert to gas, as there's gas lines in the street, though it's not connected currently to the building itself. There are standpipes for fire protection in the corridors, but no sprinkler system in the building. The electrical is a 200 amp, 3-phase service. With the likely addition of an elevator and air conditioning to the building, we would need to upgrade the electrical service to 400 amps. As far as hazardous materials, there is everything you see here in the basement is asbestos. Around the whole boiler, around all the piping throughout the building. So remediation would be necessary for asbestos, for lead paint that's throughout the basement that's chipping pretty badly. You can see there, especially because of the water issue on the west side of the building due to lack of drainage around the basement. And also there is in the original basement, there were locker rooms with vinyl asbestos tile. Those are the main elements of remediation. There's potentially an oil tank under the slab, an original oil tank, in addition to the 4 that are to be seen now. We just did some quick estimates on abatement, about $15,000 for the tiles, $32,000 for the insulation, the pipe insulation, the asbestos, and then lead paint, about $73,000. But I'll get into more of the estimate in a minute. As far as undeveloped land, we have the open space in the back of the property. The town would like to preserve as much of that as possible in different scenarios. Obviously, it's more attractive to develop that in different scenarios for a developer, either for expanded parking or for additions to the building. The field hockey is used more so than the baseball field. They're looking currently, I believe, to relocate the baseball field anyway. There's pedestrian access to the river down the access road on the right side of the building. And then there's walkways along the river, and there's vehicle access going toward the south. As far as zoning, these are just a few of the highlights of what is allowed and what isn't. There's, as far as residential, 1 and 2 family residences are allowed within the town center district, the TC designation for the property currently. Other uses such as multifamily dwellings, townhouses would require a special permit and site plan approval, as would assisted living and convalescent home. Community facilities, child care centers are allowed, adult care center is not currently, and special permit would be required for for-profit hospital or medical facility, charitable medical facility or private clubs, and public or private schools, recreational, government, municipal, and library would be allowed by site plan review. Agriculture uses are allowed. Large-scale retail is not allowed, fast food, hotel, motel, and then office spaces greater than 15,000 square feet, professional, medical, and business offices, without a change in the zoning. Less than 15,000, it is allowed by special permit. And wholesale transportation, manufacturing, processing, warehousing, storage generally are not allowed except for printing. and mixed uses just require a special permit. And I'll have Patrick go through. These scenarios that you're about to see show the kind of the maximum extent of different uses based on the zoning requirements for footprint and for parking. They're not intended to show design, just to show the impact of the size on the property.
So like Janelle said, it's just showing about what's on the site, and if we were to add things, what would that affect, whether it's the baseball field, the parking, or the field hockey field. So this is just showing the existing site and the what's on it, the existing parking lot that's behind it, the baseball field, and the field hockey field, as well as the access road. So we looked at if we were just to work within the boundaries of the building and the existing parking lot and reorganizing the parking lot, how much parking we could fit in the site, and I believe it's around 37 units, which could be used for, if the building was just to be renovated for housing, given the zoning, which we'll get into later, and as well as maybe some minor commercial project uses in the building. Another scenario was to, if the building was to can be converted completely to professional offices or commercial spaces, what would that affect on the site and the parking requirements? So using the amount of parking per, in your zoning, it's 250 square feet for one space of building. So you need about 80 parking spots if the whole building was to be commercial. So that's just showing an area of how much space that would take up on the site, and it would affect the baseball field, whether it's removed or just relocated within the site. Another scenario was to look at if the building was going to be completely community spaces, if the town wanted to do something with that. The zoning requirements is 200 square, or one space per 200 square feet of building. And then coming up with different additions, whether if it was looking at kind of maximizing the building area, if you wanted to increase commercial size on the site and how much parking that would take up, as well as doing the same area with community and showing how much parking would vastly take over the site. One we'll get into later, one of the developers asked about working with the building, but he would need an additional acre of the site for parking and other, as well as a buffer space to the public playing fields. So this was just that scenario showing, which I believe more we'll get into later. This was looking at apartment units, and we'll talk about in the marketing section of the presentation about the minimum amount of that developers usually like to do for mass housing is about 40 units is the low end. So we wanted to show how much new building space that would take up and how much parking would be necessary for both. This is also using the center school as for 8 units of housing in there. So we can still maintain the field hockey field on the site with that scenario. And then this was looking at how to, if we wanted to maximize housing on the site, looking at the zoning requirements. You could take up, you can use about 15% of the footprint for building of the area of the site. So we were able to get a total of 63 units on the site with using the building, which is the normal number that developers would like to use when doing mass housing. This is another scenario about maximizing commercial and the parking required for that, and maximizing community, same scenario. This, we talked about if we were to demo the building, what we could do for that. So this is the maximum of our apartment units if we were to demo the building, and getting about 65 units with this way. And then the parking that is required for that. And if we were to demo the building and just use a commercial building in the center of town, the max size that could be with the parking required for that, as well as if a new community building was to be put in its place.
I'll just wrap up by going through the improvements to the site infrastructure. The parking, the condition of the pavement itself is in, it's really, should be considered a failed system at this point. It's beyond just patching. So the parking would need to be repaved. You can see the walkways are a combination of concrete slabs that are cracked and some bituminous asphalt pavement. Curb cut, site structure, landscaping. We're hoping to get a better site now that the snow has melted and really do a thorough review of the retaining walls and the side stairs around the property. Necessary improvement to utilities. We discussed the natural gas connection to the building, upgrading the electrical. Currently, there's a sub-pole on this side of the street, on the other side, I'm sorry, that because the main lines are on this side, that connect overhead to the building. Given the historic nature of the building, it may be considered an improvement to trench across underground. This is the condition of the existing electrical panels in the basement. There is no electrical room set aside currently. Okay, the accessibility modifications, if this entrance continues to be the main entrance to the building, it would need to be accessible, so there would be a ramp from parking, accessible parking probably on the north or south side. And this stair has no landing at the top, so the whole stair would have to be pulled out and rebuilt to accommodate landing, both for egress as well as for accessibility. Most likely, elevator would be on the back side of the building, which would require a vestibule and a separate entrance that would allow you to connect all the floors of the building. Just running through quickly, these are a lot of the elements that we reviewed in the building envelope as issues, and we started to develop preliminary costs of what it would take to make initial repairs. We've listed for the building envelope about $875,000. And some of this cost is dependent on the type of use that the building is going to get and how much is considered bringing the building up to a point of stability. For example, you could just do the building envelope and the structure to stabilize the building and prevent its deterioration. And a lot of the interior mechanical plumbing could be part of the fit-out of the building. So there's a bit of overlap. The hazardous materials, this is just the cost for the lead paint. There's about $47,000 additional from the list that we saw earlier in asbestos pipe insulation and vinyl asbestos tiles. Preliminary costs for site infrastructure, utilities, accessibility, demolition. When you add it all up together, we're looking at probably something close to $4 million. But again, some of that is actually creating new mechanical systems within the building, creating new plumbing, new interior finishes. So I'll hand it over to Maura.
On that cheerful note.
You could either right or left click or just use the mouse circle there.
Good morning. Several years ago, I was doing a SWAT team analysis down in Maryland, and we, about 5 volunteers come in from a national organization, and we're looking at what to do with the other side of the Aberdeen training facility. And we're coming up with all of these analyses like we always do when we're a consultant. We had one developer on the team, and he just shook his head and said, "You're getting it all wrong. The market is going to determine what is going to happen to the property. We don't care whatever analyses you do." Now, I was away for a better part of a month, and we met right before I left. And at that point, my plug number for rehabbing the building was about $1.5 million. I came back, and the HAI team had been hard at work, and they informed me now that the value of the new construction was $3.8 million. That makes a big difference when you're trying to do a pro forma. If you're trying to build a new building, a new office building, and it's going to be A quality, A plus quality, you're probably looking at about $180 a foot. This building now is $194 a foot, and that doesn't include tricking it out for tenant improvements, whether they're office, residential, or what have you. So this is going to be a major hurdle that you're going to have to face. And I have a lot of slides, but I only have a few minutes, and I want to sort of cut to the chase so you can have a good, healthy debate. Our methodology is we started off looking at demographics. You know your demographics, but coming in new, you have to look at them. And it came up that you are a stable community, slight growth, rural in nature. All of this you know, but it makes a difference when you're trying to decide, because some communities are not fast growth, they're deteriorating. Some are very young communities and they have need for a certain type of housing or infrastructure. Yours is an aging population, even by comparison to your market area, that we determined to be within about 20 minutes of here. So our demographics aren't just based on the Hatfield town lines. We did them for 5, 10, and 20 minutes because you are part of a bigger community. And drive time lets you look at where mountains are, where rivers are, how you can cross in. So if you just do them in concentric circles, you get a totally wrong read. We then started interviewing as many people as we could. We interviewed, and we got a great list from the committee. It's in the report. We interviewed citizens, we interviewed realtors, we interviewed developers, we interviewed as many people from state agencies as we could. And when you then did an overlay, and that I probably can get to, going backwards? Left click for going forward, okay. Okay, that's your market area, very briefly. You be here, goes up to the state line, covers a little bit of Holyoke. We looked at public, private sector uses, daycare, you name it. And here are the alternatives that we need to discuss. Under office, economic impact was high. One of the things that Buster and the others were saying, show us where the jobs are. The problem is the economics, even before I got the 3.8 million price tag, is that Northampton has a very strong office market. And you actually, right by 91, could have a strong office market. It's just not 3 miles inland. It's just in Northampton, rents are in the mid-20s. Great news, because that means that you can buy a building, rehab it, and the market rents will support it. Here in town as opposed to by the highway, your rents are half of that. So no one can look at the numbers and make it work for office. Now, you could get lucky and find some, I'll take the name of, a small insurance company may say, we want a signature building. That may happen, but it may not happen in our lifetime. So you really can't feasibly say office is going to be happening just because of the economics. And for office, you're considered a suburb of Northampton. So that's your reality. Everyone kind of laughed, said, no, again, that would be by the highway, you have one. That building is not conducive to being an inn, just the way the whole thing is set up. Then we went into public sector use, and sort of one of my punchlines here is, because this building, if you choose to really want to keep it, is going to require so much money, you really are going to have to figure out some way of getting federal or state funds, assuming that your municipal funds are not going to be put to this use. The only use that came up was the town library. And I know it's been on the list, and I know it's been discarded as, no, we want to build, but that's your community's decision. If you think that in 2 years, when they're going to be coming up next in queue for the state funding for libraries, that you want to fund it out there, that's your decision. But that is the only public sector need that we found that will work there, that would allow you to get some state funding. Another thing that is going to be important as we evolve through this together is that there were certain amounts, like there was $74,000 for environmental. Our performers right now show that being on the developer. In talking with Pioneer Valley Economic Development, and with the state agencies, there may be the ability of getting some things that are on the you-gotta-do punch list that could get some funds. So any developer coming in is going to be saying, how much of this burden do I have to bear? If the HAI team thinks it's $74,000 to remediate, a developer's going to put in $100,000. They're just going to look at the numbers and bump them up. And it's going to make negotiations more difficult. So when we get into, and I'll wrap up quickly because I know you want to get into Q&A, we looked at one developer, and I was telling Paul, if you like the idea of it just being the building, being converted into 12, 13 units, give him an acre and back, he said he'd take the building for $1, you'd have to sell it to him. And he would take it as is with environmental. Now, he hasn't seen this report, but it goes back to what will the market bear? If there are, in fact, developers out there that would take it under those conditions, then mazel tov, let's go for it. Most of the developers needed at least 40 units to make it doable. So when I came back and Jeannot gave me the bad news, I was like, there's an old saying, if you torture numbers enough, they'll admit to anything. So I was doing performers out the yin-yang yesterday going, okay, interest rate 6.75, okay, this is what the developer wants for a return. And with his $3.8 million, it still made it difficult to make the 40 units work. That's not to say that a developer wouldn't make it work, because they really loaded up the 3.8 million. And a lot of that 3.8 million would be going into the rehab of a building. So that included a new mechanical system. So, but I still had to add money on top for doing the TI. The two things we looked at, building remains vacant. You have put in a nominal amount into maintenance. What did you come up with, $1,000 a year?
A year.
That's being put in. I mean,
Heat and insurance,
heat and insurance.
or electricity and
Not-
insurance,
not heat.
excuse me.
Yeah, we, with Paul's input, came up with, if you're going to keep it, you need to budget at least $25,000 a year just to keep it mothballed, just so it doesn't fall down on you. Then we said, what happens if you demolish the building? What's the worst that could happen? You take it down, and you don't have something crumbling, and you can then be opportunistic. You get a park out of it. My recommendation, since that's what you're looking to have us do, would be to have Paul and others look and see how much state, federal money would be available to stabilize the building just before you put it on the market. Know what your design criteria are. Developers hate uncertainty. They don't take bad news, but they hate uncertainty. They don't want to come in saying, oh, the town will allow me to do 40 units when you're only going to give them permits for 12. They just get turned off very, very quickly. We're also recommending that you do an RFQ, request for qualifications, before you do an RFP. So when you have a package that will say, we, the town of Hatfield, are looking to do this with X, we are willing to do 40 units, this is the acreage you'll have, this is the process that you're going to follow, a developer can then work within those parameters. Under the RFQ, they'll come back and say, we're a nonprofit that's going to be helping vets, or we are a for-profit and we're thinking of young professionals. They'll come back not with a full pro forma, but then you can judge through their qualifications and references whether they're the team you want. You'll get a higher response because people don't have to spend $10,000 doing a response. You can look at the quals and then kind of prioritize and take it from there. So to recap from my side, the first is I would look again at the library. It's the only public sector, and you may be able to save the building using other people's money. Second, the only thing that worked was putting in a minimum of 40 units and go through the RFQ, RFP process. The good part about doing that is that you will start to get revenues, and I think I put in here what the revenues are. Here somewhere. Well, they're in the full report. But you start getting tax revenues. You're in for zero right now, and even though you might have to do some tax increment financing where instead of getting 300,000, you get 150 to help the developer along, that's money that you have in your pockets that you don't have now. So, on that note, I was told I had 12 minutes, and I really raced through, because Jeannot had to spend time on your foundations. But I'll be glad to take any questions. Don, do you want to wrap up this?
Yes. So one of the things that I want you to understand is the projection that we put in for stabilizing the building and doing some of the basic building development costs, that potential 3.8 million, as it relates to the money that would take to develop an entire building project there. So, for example, if we were looking to let a developer develop the building and create a project, and it was going to be roughly $11 million in order to develop a project like that, the $3.8 million is not in addition to that $11 million. There would be a determination that would need to be made by the town as to how much of the stabilization you want to proceed with and how much you want to turn over to the developer. So the entire building project, to do something like that, just developing the building, if we just take a look at costs of, say, $175 to $185 a square foot to do a project like that, that's the way that those numbers relate to one another.
There's one example that's probably towards the end. Can you pull that up, Chanel, the Kansas City project? I think all of us found one case study. I know Buster pulled it up in his machine. That's the demographics. Keep going. Here it is. This was a project that was done in Kansas City. And when you look at the enlargement of the building, it's in your package, it is almost identical. It has an auditorium to it, but it shows how they in fact did some additions to the back, and it has some nice floor plans. So other people have done this, but you'll notice that they usually have fairly large. This is LEED, which I think your town would be interested in doing. But that was just an example of some of the others that have done a project.
And there are projects that, we can see in our area as well that are similar to this. There are some old school buildings in Northampton that have been rehabbed for this purpose that I'm sure people know of. So there is a similar potential for development. The one thing that we'd like to stress again is that the building is deteriorating, and we believe that you do need to do something to stabilize the building. The content of the report, if you read it in detail, really speaks to the state to which the building is degenerating, and in a very short period of time, you'll have a complete report from us. But we're hoping that we will get some sort of feedback from the town as a whole, obviously not today necessarily, but what your interpretation of the findings so far is, and if there's anything else that you can impart to us to help guide us to finish the report.
Well, thank you very much. Appreciate it. I should have asked this at the beginning, and I intended to and slipped by, but what's the intended outcome of today's session, other than informing us of kind of where you are? Are you looking for specific direction? One of the things we said when we started down this path is we all have opinions, but our intent was to hold back and look for a recommendation from some outside folks who are objective and professional. And So we're not trying to steer a decision,
Yeah,
or a recommendation, rather.
The window of opportunity is narrowing, and we knew this at the point where, Mara was wrapping up her first phase of the work, that there were not so many different options that
Right.
were really viable to you. And, we want to make sure that, the town understands that this process is really sort of steering what may be left to you to develop. And so we really want to let you know that there are simply a few
Right.
options that are
Understood.
available to you. And as a town, you have placed some restrictions, some theoretical restrictions on the development of the property. There has been from the get-go this recommendation that the playing fields not be touched, that there is a sanctity to the building that needs to be maintained in order to sort of maintain the civic intent of the tightest portion of the downtown, the common. And, we're trying to be respectful of that as we go forward and propose these things to you. But it's getting to the point where, some feedback, even in the most general sense, would be helpful to us.
Well, it's obvious trades are required. I mean, a number of these considerations were taken in a vacuum, and yes, we'd love to have it fixed up, and yes, we'd like to retain ownership, and yes, we don't want to spend any money on it. I mean, it doesn't all come together. My takeaway of what you're saying is really housing is probably the best potential.
It is and it isn't. If, in fact,
Other than, you mentioned
library.
the library. However, remember, the library grant is premised on a specific design and building that has been approved. It's not an independent grant just to go build a library. It's
okay, but in looking forward to your response, if the library is not an option, we'll just take it out of the report. I mean, you can get back to us and just say, please, just take the library out. It's not going to be happening there. So at that point, we'll just say, okay, we don't have, when we go to the public hearing, public meeting, we're not opening up the can of worms of should it be the library or not. If that's not an option, fine, that's the only public sector need we identified that would potentially allow you to get state funds. So then if you go, well, that's off the table, then you'll say, well, what are the only options that we have for, other than demolition? And that would be residential development between 40 and 60 units.
We realized that, the library project couldn't simply be diverted to this site, and that you would need to go through a whole other process to do that. And you're
Exactly.
effectively in the queue based on the initial work that you've done for the library. The premise was that if, in effect, it fell through or you didn't make it through the grant process and you really needed a backup and there was significant support for doing some kind of library project, and that need, in effect, overwhelmed the town's sensibility about developing this parcel further, if there was a certain resentment to developing 40 units of housing on the site, the library project potentially fell through. It was as it was previously planned. Then you have a fallback development position to potentially develop the library here. That's why it's still on the table.
You mentioned building restrictions. Give us a little feedback on building restrictions. What do you feel that the restrictions are out there? You said that we placed restrictions on.
Land.
It was the utilization of the land that.
Okay, you mean the zoning utilization?
No,
Or-
taking some land to develop the property
Okay.
in the back.
I mean, that, right now, the school uses that, as everybody knows, as a field hockey, but from what I understand, there's fields up at the elementary school that can be used, there's news fields that can be made over at the high school. So if it's going to make a difference to developing this area, then I think we need to look at that as a whole,
Well,
okay?
that's what I
And-
think part of this is about today for you.
That's right.
To say, yes, let's proceed with like a 40-unit development, but we're gonna need X amount of land. And is it okay to proceed with that?
We've already lost a fight to rent it out a long time ago.
Right.
Okay, because of this whole mess, all right? And maybe it's time that we move forward, and the school is going to have to find another field hockey place to play.
And
we
not only
need to-
as the committee also, we were looking, when you keep saying the library, when I say library, we're trying to couple it with the Historical Society and maybe the basement or ground level, let the rec department move in there where they could have outside facilities, bathrooms, but all coupled together, you know, with the funding, you know, if that's possible.
Okay, another question.
ahead.
Another question I have is housing for the elderly. Okay, if that was additional housing over there, and I noticed that you used some of the fields behind there and parking and so on. Is that something as an option that would work?
Well, we considered a bunch of different housing typologies, and Maura would probably be better qualified to speak to that, but we looked at some things that were very specific in their use, like whether or not veterans housing was a possibility, and what was the other group that we had talked about?
It was like people that have MS, or you have people that have special. Why we're having the meeting today was to talk about at 30,000 feet
Sure.
where you are, okay? If you're trying to get what's called a continuing care retirement community, which is a real full-service nursing home, they need a minimum of 120 units. You don't have it there. Even if you fully built out, I don't think the town would approve 120 units downtown. It's just
That's the
not
location.
really simpatico with what you got going. So, but when we talked with several of the nonprofit developers, they would say, we need 40 units and we do a mixed use of market rate to some specialty subsidized housing, so they could pull some federal or state grants in for that. And you can become, that's where you can be starting to become, we really need housing for people who work for the town of Hatfield. So we want housing for our young firemen, teachers, policemen who want to live in town, and we want to encourage it. So you can say we will allow X units to be subsidized housing, but you can also specify who that general group would be, like town employees. So you can make it a win-win situation if you're trying to go for 40 units, and I'll call that mixed-use housing because they would have several different buckets of people that could be tenants. It could be vets, it could be Hatfield senior citizens, it could be Hatfield employees, it could be a variety of things. But if the unanimous thought was no, 12 units, that's what you get, and maybe we'll give an acre of parking, that changes the dynamic. So we didn't want to go really deep into one silo until we got your feedback.
But you mentioned the 40 versus 60 unit for housing. What was the delta in the space required behind the building to support those?
Much land for 40 to 60.
I don't remember specifically. It's
An acre, I
it's
believe.
one of the developed scenarios. But obviously, it has a tangible impact on, yeah.
Oh, it took most of the, I see.
That's,
Again, this is not proposing a layout, but it's just showing
I understand.
the amount of area. 40, potentially, the field hockey could be maintained, but not the baseball, the Little League field.
That's all right.
And on 60 units, then the whole property has to be really developed.
So the 60 units would be just about 41,000 square feet.
Mm-hmm.
It would be a two-story kind of structure. And if you go to the next slide, with the single, it's only, nope, keep going back. Yep, there you go. That's roughly 32,000, and that's also just including the existing building too.
For 8 units,
Okay.
If the property is developed for 40 units, then a portion of the playing field can indeed be maintained.
Theoretically, yes.
That's correct, yeah.
We keep the field hockey field, but lose the little...
Just field hockey.
You keep the field hockey.
And you would also keep the road so people walking around town could access the river. We hear that that's part of the
Yes.
culture of the town, is that loop is sacred land.
Sacred ground,
Because
yeah.
one of the things we discussed in the committee is keeping that possibly as a park, that open area, if the building is developed for housing. And
You mean the remainder of the field?
could retain the back of it,
Yep.
at least for a parking area where people would have access to the river. Presently, it is being used for walks to the
Yes.
river. A lot of people use it for exercise. And I think it's important because
Good.
it's the center of your town as such. And that site has some historical, value, I think, for the town. And if we can't keep the building, unless, I would hope that we'd be able to keep at least a portion of the site for the town. And one of the problems is the cost of remediation.
Yes.
The cost of construction of that building. I would like to see the building retained, frankly, in some manner. And I think the library is a potential means. I realize that the grant presently is tied to the present site, and I know people have worked very hard to see that come to fruition. But if it doesn't, the only way we can get public funds presently, I think, is through developing the property for library use. I think that's about the only municipal use right now that would probably be feasible. And that has to be considered, I think, by the town, if the town wants to retain that building. If the town doesn't want to retain the building, then housing is the optimum choice. But I think if we go that route, then I think it's important that we retain at least part of the playing field. And maybe the town doesn't want to sacrifice any portion of that, I don't know, or maybe they want to sacrifice it all. But I think it's important that that site, because it is the center of our town, be maintained in some fashion.
Well, I personally agree with you completely. So perhaps maybe the direction, let me just throw it out.
Well,
One, twofold. One, continuing on the housing with the 40 unit, which would retain the playing fields, it would retain access to the dike. And then as an alternative, or the other alternative would be to retain, the issue of retaining it for public use for, in pursuing the library,
And
if
the other
that's possible.
uses we-
And there's, I know the recreation folks have notions about how to build out the back, potential for the COA to,
The other
Share it.
usage we've discussed in the
Yeah.
committee, and I think it's important, since this is being televised, that the public know that, is that whether or not that site could be developed as a senior center. I think the senior center here is probably too small, maybe presently, to meet the needs, I don't know. Either senior center combined with a community center and possibly housing. And Stanley has thought that that could be used as a combined senior community center and possibly housing in the basement. But I don't think it's feasible, quite frankly. It's just a question. But I think it's very important, since we're all here together, that the architect now, they want some direction from the town. They want to know where to go, and they need that badly. So it's important that you, the Board of Selectmen, as well as the members of the committee, give a vent to the direction. They need direction, and we haven't yet been able to give it our consensus on the committee. But I think they would really like some direction from the board, as well as the committee.
I believe we all talked about having that as a library. If we continue to proceed with the library, then I feel it should go, one, to town meeting, and two, then put on a ballot and have both the town meeting vote on it and a ballot vote. That way you know that the town is going to be committed to put the library there. Because right now, we have naturally a group of people that want the library down next to the library existing, all right? So if they're going to fight that and not this, then it's going to be a toss-up here, okay? So I think you've got to get clear direction from the town. I mean, we have our opinions, but I think we need it from the townspeople on their opinion on what they really want to do. Do they want the library at the existing library, the addition, or do they want to turn this into a new library and clean up the center of town? Definitely something has to be done with it. We have to, as town officials, have to be careful on what money is spent in that building. We have infrastructures throughout the whole town that are failing, that need work before any buildings need work, okay? Because, God forbid, the sewer doesn't run, we're in trouble. Everybody's in trouble. The water doesn't run, that's in trouble. So there's some priorities that have to take place over some of the buildings, and that's some of the reasons why we have to be careful on where we spend some money here. Even though we'd love to spend more money, but we can't in some cases.
I'm sorry.
One of the things with retaining, believe me, I'm not for taking away the field hockey field, because, my grandchildren play field hockey, and I don't want people calling me going, oh my God, you're against the field hockey field. But going down there to the games right now, as the building stands and the parking is, if you retain the field hockey field there, and you're going to talk about potentially building a 40-unit housing, the parking will be an issue, because people that come to the games park on Main Street, plus they park behind, and if that building is going to be utilized for housing, then that parking area for the housing is going to be totally shut off to people parking for the games. So our committee did speak about the possibility of another place for the field hockey, for the school and the town to think about building another field hockey field, because I think the fields back there would really benefit the building up front. You have more potential of putting a park in, and parking spaces for people that want to go on the dike and type way in the back, and still retain, if you're going to do housing, parking spaces just for the housing without parking on Main Street.
If it's not a field hockey use, you have more flexibility in laying out
Exactly.
the public use of the space.
Exactly.
Whether it's
And
relocating
believe
the
me, I'm
pavilion
not
or...
against taking, I'm not for taking the field away. I know how much, it means to the town and to the school and stuff, but if there is another spot that we could build a field hockey field, I think, that might be something we should consider.
One of the things that I just mentioned, I'm sorry,
That's okay.
was, I wrote down my numbers, the taxes, if you did the 40 units, were anticipated to be about $133,000 a year. And that is, again, before you give any kind of incentive, but that's money you don't have. And there's been a consistency that Paul has driven home to the committee of what good stewards of the money that you have and how you spend it, and that there isn't a lot of money to go around for any of the projects you need. So keep your eye on the ball in that you could in fact be getting a project going back on the tax rolls.
Okay, the other side of that is, if it's elderly, 55 and older, that's one thing. But if it's just open housing for everybody, and you've got 2 kids per unit or 1 kid per unit at $10,000 a unit, that's a lot of money taken away. So the $150,000 all of a sudden diminishes, because now you've got to educate all those kids, and it costs a burden on your town. You have to be really careful on that part.
We have capacity in our school system to handle.
It doesn't matter on capacity, it matters on how much money the town will have to spend to educate the kids.
Again, this goes back to, if you decide you want us to look at the 40 units, There's a program called the Rutgers University Study that shows, depending on the size of the unit and how much the rent, how many children will go into the school system. So you can divide things that are studio apartments
Right.
or, 1.5 bedroom, meant for den. Those have very few young people in the school system, as opposed to saying you're putting up a 3-bedroom apartment, which is going to lend to more kids. So you can control a bit of that through how, when you write the criteria for the developer, saying, this is the market we want you to appeal to, and this is basically, you're not trying to micromanage them, going back to my initial statement, the market will tell you, but there are ways of quantifying, which we'll be glad to do.
And we're not, oh, I'm sorry. We're not looking for necessarily a specific recommendation from you. We realize that it's effectively a town decision, but if there is something that you can impart to us about the work that we have done so far that directs us in a way, for example, that as you said, Mr. Lesko, that the open space consideration, the maintenance of the fields, that needs to come into play in the course of the project. We feel that there is a significant amount of open space in the town of Hatfield, and that, in all likelihood, there would be another location where you could have these sports activities. As we were talking about the initial development of the project, Jeannot, Patrick, and Maura and I were looking at what goes on in the town. We looked at how segmented the town is in terms of its uses from a zoning perspective. We looked at the fact that, people walk this loop within town, and we were considering, as we were postulating what we might do with the parcel, what uses we could put on the site that would really make the site more of a community function. And so the idea that you have this connection to the river, that people walk around town and they could effectively walk through this site and go to the river, and it could be something more grand. We liked that idea. It seemed a bit beyond what the real function of the study was to go so far with a solution when there were so many other things really to evaluate. But those are the kinds of things that we're really looking for you to say to us. Either, there is a narrowing of focus or something along those lines.
Well, as I said earlier, there are trades required. And clearly, if you look at what are we talking about, what's the goal here? And the goal is to find an acceptable use of the property here in the center of town. Now, there's some trades required in sorting through that. And there are alternatives to the playing fields. I'll just throw on the table, just as a way ahead, if you're looking for some direction, and my colleagues can jump in or agree or disagree, but a twofold strategy: one, with the housing, and use the 40 unit or so, and plan to use some of the playing field, retain the entry to the dike area for walking and exercise purposes. The remainder, if it's sufficient for the field hockey, fine. If not, as Ms. Parada suggested, at least it's a park kind of area, open.
That's just a potential.
For community, yeah, I know, we're not trying to define it, but.
I would like to see the building retained in some
And then,
fashion,
well,
because you have to think about the growth of this town. You
Yeah.
have to think not only about today, but tomorrow. And I think it's the center of your town.
Yep.
And it's very important that that building and that site be maintained, but realistically, it may no longer be feasible for this town because of the need for sewer and water problems that we have
But then-
that will need remediation.
Then the second look would be to continue to look at the public use with the school being, the library being the driver, and you have to sort that out here shortly, but library, recreation, potentially council on aging, those kinds of uses.
I got a
Well,
couple
I
questions.
as far as the library, I do remember going to the committee 5 years ago, probably 6 years ago, and they definitely didn't want anything to do with that building. Absolutely nothing to do with that building.
Okay.
Now, we went to town meeting 3 years ago, maybe 4 years ago,
Yeah.
appropriated money for an engineering study, an architectural study of the existing library, which again, costs the taxpayers a lot of money. I can't come up with a total figure, but it's up there. Now, for me to go back to town floor and tell people, no, we don't want that building, we'll throw that money away, let's design something over here, I don't think that's gonna fly. It wouldn't fly with me. I personally like the idea of the 40 units for elderly, number one, that's always been my choice, and for veterans. We've got veterans out there right now that are homeless. And I think we could possibly get some government money to help us renovate that place and to add on in the back. That is my feeling, and, you know, I just, as far as the library goes, and I agree with Ms. Parada, but on the other hand, it's, I don't want to see this money thrown away that we've already appropriated, you know? That is my personal feeling, so, that's it.
My feeling on the land itself, the building, it's a beautiful building, but to me, the land is most valuable to the town for future. And I'm not talking about our future, I'm talking about our kids' future, okay? If we do anything with it, I feel it should be a leasehold property, okay, instead of a fee simple. And I don't know how you guys had presented this, but to me, the leasehold would be, give them a 100-year lease, give them a 200-year lease. At least down the road, our future kids can decide what to do with it instead of our deciding what to do with it right now. At least there's a say down the road when the lease comes to an end. And I would recommend a 100-year lease. None of us will be around, and let the kids decide what they want to do at that point in time.
I have a couple of questions. Yeah, so, I mean, one of the options that we talked about initially was, you know, renovating strictly the building for housing. But because of the economics, that's simply not an option. Is that correct?
It appears, like I say, the gentleman who said, I'll buy it for $1, and I
Hadn't seen
hear,
the
you know,
report.
Hasn't seen the report.
Yeah.
Maybe he's done this 12 times, and each time he's made it work.
Yeah.
But that gets into the balance of, he said, I will buy it, not lease it. Other people have said, I have no problem doing a 50-year lease if you do the environmental remediation. So my mini recommendation is, now that we have an idea of how much the environmental is, you shouldn't wait 3 months to have us finish the report. Paul should be commissioned, aren't you glad I'm volunteering you?
Thank you.
To be, talking with Jim about what state funds are available for doing the environmental remediation. That shouldn't wait, because developers don't like environmental remediation. It's just a black
no.
hole. They want it to be delivered clean. They can take care of the shell and the ADA when it's their turn to be the developer. Environmental people kind of just shy away from.
Are you referring the setback away from the river as a 100-foot buffer, anything closer to that? Or is that what you're referring to,
That's,
environmental, or?
No.
the
No,
environmental?
I'm talking about
Asbestos and lead paint.
Asbestos.
and-
Building is
Asbestos,
All the structural
asbestos and
Okay.
lead paint.
Asbestos pipe insulation, lead paint,
Tiles.
vinyl asbestos tile,
Yeah.
paint, the potential for an oil tank still potentially be under the slab, and also the pigeon and other
I mean,
fecal matter in the
that's
the
not
attic and
something
cupola.
we can say, let it go. It's something the state
Right.
is basically going to have to say, I mean, they've got guidelines on what has to happen now.
Yep.
And they can't say to the developer, well, we're going to give you special privileges over here and then attack everybody else. You can't do
Absolutely,
that.
sir. That's what I'm saying, is that now that HAI and the engineers have come up with a pretty good laundry list of what has to be covered, you shouldn't wait for the report to be finished before you start addressing, are there funds available to take care of that remediation? It would just make it a lot easier when you go out to the development community.
And the cost of remediation is 75,000 or 100,000, you think?
It's more like 120,000. The 73,000 or 74 was just for the lead paint. When you add the asbestos pipe insulation and the vinyl asbestos tile, it's closer to 120,000,
Okay, fine,
plus a few other
lovely things.
items that I mentioned.
Unless this is an outright grant to the town, it's going to be hard sell on the town side to spend $120,000 on that building to remove the lead paint when we've got to put a sewer line in on King Street because it's failed, and you got to spend $250,000 there, okay? So the difference between the two, you have to be really careful here.
My next question.
Yes.
Let's talk about the 40 units. Is that economically viable as a standalone, or is there going to need to be some kind of government subsidy coming from
There will,
someplace?
and at this point, and I just got the numbers from the gentleman yesterday, that it looked like it needed some kind of tax incentive or some other nudge from you folks to make it happen.
Okay.
And that included having the rent be zero for it. You know, the rent would be your taxes, if you will. So I did not put anything in for a rental payment on an annual basis. That's the kind of stuff we get in and we fine tune once we decide which way you want to go.
Okay.
So I'll be running a lot more numbers based on 40 units, and I'll go back to the development community. And I never put it, they want to sell, they want to lease. You
Right.
said, under what terms would you take it? Would you consider a long-term lease? Would you insist on fee ownership? One person was adamant about having to own it in fee. The others said, depending on the other terms and conditions, we could get financing for a 50-year lease.
In this impact study that you're referring to, I would like to see that it includes anything to do with the school,
Right.
children, so
Yep.
on. Okay, you can
Noted.
say that it's going to impact our taxes, we're going to make money, 150,000, but how much is it going to cost us on the other end when you educate X amount of kids,
Okay,
okay?
done, or will be done.
So my final comment, I guess, question, if it's the town's decision to salvage the building, it sounds to me like, at a minimum, the baseball field is going to have to be part of the package.
Correct. Yes,
Okay,
to summarize, yes.
that's what I'm trying to do.
I'm sorry, say that again, please?
That if it's the town's decision to salvage try and save the building, the baseball field is basically going to have to be sacrificed.
Okay, but
Relocated.
I'm not sure how much that's even being used. Did you explore that at all? I think they're playing at the elementary school now,
Yes.
Yeah, I spoke to the
They
rec committee
moved.
chairman, and he mentioned that.
so it's really just the
So it's
The
not
field
even-
hockey.
It's not, so the baseball field isn't even being used
It's
now?
overrun right now.
It's
and,
right.
Okay.
That's
They're-
not
All
an
right.
issue.
Okay.
I believe
they've invested behind the elementary school.
Makes sense.
the rec committee chairman mentioned that they are already exploring another.
But just to
Option two.
clarify, let's clarify this. In other words, you talk about the baseball field.
Baseball.
But you could still retain an area where the field hockey.
Yes, yes.
Right.
Correct.
Yeah,
right.
yeah. We're talking about the area right,
Optimum way would be to go to a ground lease, quite frankly, but I
Correct.
don't know whether or not a developer can be found that'd be willing to take that, a ground lease for the building and the baseball field, and still leave part. But that's something
Yeah.
to be explored as such.
So my mission is, between now and the next time we meet, to look further at the 40-unit development along with the HAI team. I'll look at the impact of schools. I'll find out more about fee versus long-term lease. Any other specific questions?
Fee simple or leasehold.
Right.
Okay? I, for
Federal
one,
grants.
if it were going to be a fee simple, which is be they'd own it outright, I'd be standing up at town meeting floor against it. Okay?
I'll just give you the
I'm
information.
just letting you
and then
know
can-
that leasehold is very important.
Just to clarify for you, if it's a lease, the town retains the fee,
Right.
which is the ownership of the
Right.
property.
Right.
So you are, is renting out for
Correct.
a.
As long as it's rented out,
Correct.
absolutely, I have no problem with it.
I just have one other
Yes.
question. Have you met with the housing authority and talked to them at all?
No.
Okay, because we do have Capewalk over here, and you're on the housing authority. Do you need more units?
Yes, we do.
Yes.
We have no two-bedroom units.
I will be glad to do that again. We were trying to be up here and not go
Understand.
deep until we got some feedback as to, exactly what you were trying to do. Or not exactly, but direction as to A or B. But now we'll go deep and look at housing, including vets, seniors.
Okay.
How about town employees? Is there a need for town employee housing?
I don't really think so. I mean, there may be somewhere down the line, but right now I think we're pretty well set.
We'd be more
with it.
concerned about our elderly than our town employees at this point in time.
Okay.
The housing authority is a good place to start to have a meeting with them.
I will do that. And Buster, I'll get your phone number so I can call.
Anything else? This subtopic?
Good.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Selectmen will take a 5-minute break. The next topic is the fire and ambulance organizational adjustment, and we have Chief and talking about position descriptions and the overall integration of the two activities. Bill, why don't you?
Okay, so basically what we did was, we created another job description. We currently have one deputy chief, so this would be a second deputy chief position, but this would be more air to the side of the ambulance, the EMS process, so.
Okay.
Steve and I worked on this job description.
Okay, y'all have a copy of it. I got some questions.
Yeah.
As I read this deputy chief is also going to be a fireman,
Correct.
and it meets all the qualifications as other firemen.
Correct.
Okay, so now there'll be 2 deputy chiefs?
Yes.
Okay.
The primary function of this one would be the EMS.
The focus, main
Right.
focus, but you have here, he's able to fill in for you.
Right. Correct.
So,
Right.
so he or she or whoever
Right.
is going to have all the required training and
Yes.
meet.
Yes.
So basically, it would be Jonathan or, what's the chain of command? It would be you, Jonathan, and then Stephen?
Correct, right.
Okay,
Everybody
so,
has a designated number, so I being 1, Jonathan be 2, he be 3, and then we go down from there, the captain's 4,
Okay,
5,
but
whatever.
on an org chart, you're
Right.
parallel, but
Right.
your seniority, you move that way in terms
Yeah,
of.
yes, right.
okay.
One thing, where, I just didn't see any here, maybe a small thing, the contract responsibilities, you've got the coastal contract, you've got working agreements with other communities.
Yep.
Is that in here somewhere? Did I?
That was addressed somewhere that, if you look under essential functions, it covers part of what you're talking about. Well, those first 2 paragraphs, you could actually consider, it doesn't specifically say dealing with coastal and so forth, but,
Well,
you know,
Because
handling,
in fact, the contracts still are, the select board, obviously, it's only the person that basically facilitates the contract. Select board still signs contracts with coastal, and stuff like that. So I think if you look at it, and obviously it could be adjusted, but if you look at it and you look under the area where it talks about the administrator of the ambulance and remain in compliance with the regulations, the food and drug, and the hospital affiliation, that covers a lot of those. It obviously doesn't say intercept agreements, mutual aid agreements, and billing agreements. It could. But I think that when you talk about the administration of the ambulance, you probably comes under that. And this person still doesn't have the, an authority to sign any agreement anyway.
Well, but this is a staff focal point for
Right.
some of this stuff. Okay. What would be the effective date? I didn't see that anywhere here of
April
the
1st, we
integration?
actually talked about April 1st being in effect, a date we could, that this would actually, the transition would work, given the way that the ambulance is structured now and some of the financial stuff, and Bill and I met yesterday, and we talked about, you know, bill schedules and stuff like that, and payrolls, and how we were gonna transition some stuff. And we could actually see it work in April 1st. There's no reason in our minds to, it's a cost neutral.
Okay.
Move.
We'll come back to that.
Yep, sure.
And have a motion to make it effective on a certain.
I think the first thing that we have to look at is just to vote on the coordinate, to taking the ambulance and the fire and combining the two together, and that should
think
be our
we-
first vote.
I think we did that already.
Yeah, I think you did, I think
We already
you
did
took
that.
it up and you
Okay.
said.
So now we're talking about, we asked them to come back with, okay, how are you going to do this?
Okay, so the vote has been taken already, and
To
so-
do it, but not when it's effective, and we're just covering down some of the loose ends.
Okay.
How about agreements with other communities?
Yeah, those are mutual aid agreements, and again, those are,
So I guess my point is, do any of them have to be reworked?
no, because I believe you signed the mutual aid agreements.
Well, we signed the state mutual aid agreement, okay?
No, we signed them when the towns did.
Yes, and I believe, and so here's the deal.
But
the
I've
mutual aid-
never seen one that I
I know the
signed
city
with
of
South
Northampton, we've
Deerfield.
signed one.
Yeah, so mutual aid
as
agreements
far as
actually
I
are
think the other
regularly
towns-
revised
I don't
every
think we, because
3
that
to
was
5
kind of
years.
considered under the
Excuse me.
plugger.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, mutual aid agreements are generally updated and revised every 3 to 5 years anyway.
Yeah.
It's probably, I'll be honest with moving into the new office, it's probably something that's on my list, is to revise all the agreements, update them, bring them to the board, have the board look at them, talk about, you know, where we're at with mutual aid and what our
Well,
agreements
for
are.
example, we were talking about this the other night. You got the new organizational arrangement based in Deerfield with Whately, Deerfield, and Sunderland. Now, that's, I guess, operational now?
No,
Not yet.
but once they are,
I thought they
But-
said they were operational.
what they
Well,
say and
in
what.
any event,
Yeah.
we had arrangements with Whately, I
Lately.
believe.
And so we will, once they have now appointed a director who's always supposed to facilitate things like that, or they're in the process of that. And then once that's set, we will facilitate a mutual aid
New
agreement
agreement.
with that ambulance service, and then we'll
Okay.
come to the board, and then that will happen.
Okay.
One of the things that I've been asking for years is a cost analysis on this whole department. My concern is that we're losing EMTs, not gaining EMTs. Think originally we had something like 36 EMTs once back in the 80s, okay, when this thing was first established. We're down to what, about 6 or so, all right? How are we going to get this back up, okay?
we've added-
Let me finish
Yeah,
first,
okay.
and then you can interject. My question is, how are we going to get this thing back up, okay? One of the things that I see is that maybe it's not such a bad idea to look at partnering with Northampton, with South Deerfield, okay, as a regional type thing, and having 2 ambulances, maybe one in this town, maybe one in that town. We need the manpower and not the ambulance, okay, so to speak, okay? So I don't ever want to throw out any possibilities of the joint venture here when it might work to our advantage, okay? So, I think the Board of Selectmen, in order to make sure this thing moves forward, if we're going to keep the ambulance in town, is to work closely with the ambulance in the department to make sure that we can move forward, and we're moving forward in the right direction. The only thing that will tell us if we're moving in the right direction are the numbers, okay? In order to analyze the whole progress of the approach, you need the numbers. You need to find out how many calls, how many people are responding, when are they responding, all kinds of stuff, okay? Once you have the numbers, you can see where the problems are and then correct the problems.
Well, there are 2 things. I'm a little confused. On the one hand, you're talking about cost analysis, and then on the other hand, you're talking about the operational aspects and how effective it's working.
Well, the cost analysis dictates where the problems are.
Not really. I mean, what are you costing the town of Hatfield? You're virtually self-sustaining except for your ambulance. which we
What do you
buy.
mean, what our costs are?
In terms of cost, they're virtually self-sustaining. And the only cost that the town of Hatfield's bearing is the cost of a new ambulance and it's past 10 years now.
Right,
Yes.
okay?
So that's been the only,
Whereas-
not the only cost.
Whereas originally, everything was taken care of. I mean, we had enough money to buy a new
Well,
ambulance.
you know, if you advertise a $120,000 vehicle, you've spent less than $10,000 a year for the last 10 years on this.
If I may, first of all, it's a reasonable, you know, cost analysis is a reasonable thing. It's something that I've been looking at, you know, the issue, part of the issue right now, today, is that my office consists of a backpack.
Yeah,
And no, but that is just part of the reason of trying to do cost analysis, but it is true. We've added 2 EMTs now in the last 6 months. That's good for us. We've secured, I've worked with the board, and we've secured funding to send people to
Training.
class. You know, we're planning, the chief and I were discussing, we're planning a little bit of a recruitment campaign around town meeting and some other stuff to get people, to get EMTs. We need EMTs. It's not 1980 anymore, and that's the sad part.
Yeah.
You know, in 1980, employers would let people out of work to go on ambulance calls. Now it's not so easy to do. In 1980, it was $50 to keep your certification. Now it's $150. We've gone through a lot over the years. Why have our EMTs dwindled? Retirement, and people have moved out of the community. Partially because some couldn't afford to live here. You know, we haven't lost people because of lack of interest. You know, job restrictions. Had someone say to me straightforward, I can't give as much as I could. We recruited young people over the years, and what happened? Well, young people have kids, and then you have family responsibilities. You can't leave your child at 6 a.m. You have to drop them at school at 7:30. You know, so we've run into that stuff. So we're in recruitment. We're in recruiting. Yes, do we need to grow? Absolutely. That's part of this project. That's why we talked about this combining things. Every employee of the ambulance at this point is also a member of the fire department today. So our hope is bring everyone together. You know, we've used first responders more in the last 3 months, 4 months than we have. Well, actually, so 6 months. You know, we're trying to maybe recruit some fire department people to the ambulance too. You know, you have to bring everyone together. In terms of regionalization, you know, regionalization is it a thought with the other places? It's worth looking at. But one of the things for the board to consider, straightforward math, is that they have an $850,000 operating budget in southern Franklin County. And you'd split that between 3 communities, I can tell you what they're paying. Split it between 4, it's not a lot less. We'd be looking over $100,000 contribution. I don't think that is anything here. Northampton, we have mutual aid agreements. It is a matter of a few minutes, and they are notified. It's not like we wait and wait and wait. They are notified. There's a structured system on mutual aid. It's triggered after a certain time period, or you know, certain orders or activity. You know, and that's actually something Bill and I picked up at the dispatch center last week. We're going through that stuff and their procedures and what their procedures are. You know, we're trying to roll the fire department into this. So if we call a mutual aid ambulance, chief and I'd like to send the fire department guys over. So they can get there, they can render care. If we need a mutual aid ambulance, they can assist the mutual aid ambulance loading the patient and get the patient to the hospital quicker. So we're trying, that's part of the reason to bring all this together, is so we can work better together, be a little more efficient. Is it gonna save the town, combining save the town money? No. Is it gonna cost them more? No. But we're trying to be more efficient. You know, the chief's here, this person has to be here during the week. There's gonna be some hours they have to put in. Chief and I have talked, we already do some inspections together. But we've talked and stuff like, if the chief takes vacation, this person could be here that day. So there's still someone here, if you're looking for somebody, if somebody's looking for an inspection. We might be able to expand the scope of what the town's doing right now. And we still need to grow the ambulance. If there's anyone out there that wants to go to EMT class, call town hall, get in touch with us. We'll send them.
Okay. A couple questions I have here. How many hours is the position that Stephen will be doing?
But we looked at what they currently pay for the manager, the stipend they give, and it works out to probably about 5 to 6 hours
Yeah.
5 or 6 a week?
a week, right, to do the administrative part.
Because it has to go, because of the stuff that we ran into over the years, the retirement stuff and other stuff, it has to go from a stipend to hourly once we
Hour,
combine
right.
departments. There's no stipends anymore. The fire department do away with stipends probably 4 or 5 years ago now.
And what hourly rate would he be based at?
What the current deputy gets, which is $22.71.
And that's in your budget package.
Yeah, well, we'd still be using.
It's still, it's already there
Yeah.
because it's
The
the
ambulance
ambulance.
budget, right, so if he worked for the ambulance,
Yeah.
it'd come out of the ambulance side of it. If he's fighting a fire, it comes out of the firefighter.
And that's something we talked about,
Yeah.
tracking that
Oh.
stuff over time and looking at, effects over the year and stuff like that.
Okay.
Does it make sense to keep it tracked separately?
I think it does. I think it does
Right.
make sense to know because as Ed talked about, he wants a figure. And if you want to have a strong figure on what the cost benefit is to things, we need to try to keep track of ours as best we can.
You can keep track of it for work-related, but I think you have to be careful and combine the two, okay, when it comes down to the state, what's that chapter in the law that we have to protect firefighters and police?
111F.
111F,
Right.
right, okay? Right now, it excludes ambulance, okay, unless they're part of the fire department. So you would be part of the fire department, so it would fall into that category. So if you're calling yourself an EMT, like if you divide that, then you gotta be careful because you may not be covered, okay? So as far as you're concerned, you're there as a fireman, okay, doing EMT work. You follow me?
Right, yeah.
Okay,
and
you
I
got to be
think-
really careful on how you define it. Okay, you can define it as far as a budget type thing on your own, but don't use that to put the line in, so to speak.
Right.
Okay?
Yeah.
Because if something happens and you got hurt, you don't fall under 111F anymore.
Yeah, but we already, again, we already voted on
Yeah.
combining.
Right, and I think it's.
In other words, the
111M.
Ambulance,
So basically
everybody
what
would be a
he's
fireman.
doing- What he's doing now is in order to keep track of expenses,
Yes.
hourly wages,
Right.
he's still gonna charge under an
Right.
EMT hourly, and
Yeah.
he's
Our
doing the
belief is the
firework.
next fiscal year, the lines all stay the same. And in fact, as we go to FY16, we may combine things like office supplies.
Sure.
And, that stuff, the simple stuff. There's other stuff, ambulance medical supplies, we're still gonna break out, ambulance professional services still needs its own line. Ambulance,
guess-
staff training needs it, because you need to be able to say, this is where the money's going. So we're looking at analysis and stuff.
I guess what I'm saying, Stephen, is for your personal benefit.
Right,
Okay?
right.
So when you work for the town of Hatfield on the ambulance, okay, you're working as part of the fire department and not anything else but that. You
Yeah.
follow me?
Right, yes, I know what you're saying, yes.
Okay.
And that's, I think, the job, yeah.
For insurance protection?
Yeah.
I think that's.
I just want to be clear on
Yeah.
that, okay?
No, he's, understand. Jan, did you have any questions on this issue? Is there a motion to make the organizational adjustment effective 1 April
So
as
moved.
proposed?
Second.
Second, any other discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Great.
And
Thank you.
just want to add that,
Good luck.
that includes the 5 to 6 hours a week at the 22.71 per hour.
All the budgets, it's already reflected.
Yeah, excellent.
Okay.
And I'll be back in a few months when we get figures, we'll have better figures, year-end figures. I'm working with Coastal now at some figures. There was some things that we're working out that I should have better figures. The treasurer was in here and the figures he had were not the right figures, so now I've got the right figures and we're getting that. So I'll be back in a couple months with some more analysis and stuff, some real hard numbers to look at.
Waited 5 years, I can wait another year.
To look at FY16, hey, we're getting there.
Thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
Appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
Mark, please. Next topic has to do with our town hall garage, and Mark Gillot is here to talk about some of the issues and how they're being addressed,
At some
kind of where
point,
we are.
at some point, Mark will probably just give us an update, but I think we're going to have to go into executive session at the end of our meeting.
I'll give you an update on where the project is right now. I think as I reported last week, we're very close to being substantially complete, which we've been for about 6 weeks at this point. So the contractor is there today on the job site, I guess, putting up the signage for the police and the fire departments. But there are a number of items that still remain on the list to be done. Among those are exterior doors, so some glass issues with those and weather stripping issues. There's countertop issues in terms of quality of work.
He's got a whole list.
Grab bars in the bathrooms are not complete. Some interior glass, like police entry glass between the waiting area and the work area. We're not sure whether that's to specification.
It's supposed to be a one-way mirror, and it's smoke glass. That's all. You can see right through it and see it on the other side.
There's some, yeah, that's another one of the glass issues. The final cleaning hasn't been done, the floor polishing hasn't been done, some patching on the exterior siding. Fire department Knox box has not been installed. Electric transmitter or a network transmitter between the town hall and the new building has not been installed. There's some thermostat issues with programming and what is doing summer-winter functions for the HVAC, and the dryer gas hookup has not been completed. So that's kind of a quick summary of what's remaining on the project.
This glass we're talking about, you want mirrored glass? So in other words,
It was the police requirement that they wanted a piece of glass
I
between.
mean, I've been in police stations to get details, road details for, officers. I've never seen it. There's always tinted glass, where I can actually see somebody that I want to talk to.
This is in the interrogating room area
Oh, in the
where...
interior, well,
Yeah.
whatever. I
This was
thought you
just-
meant when you walk into
No,
the,
no.
No. Yeah, when you walk in, that's another
Okay.
piece of glass,
Yeah.
which, there may or may not be an issue. We requested that it be tempered glass, so we're not sure that it is at this point. So that's pretty much a
So,
summary of the work.
As much as we have, and we have the contract issues out there that we need to talk about in executive session.
Are you-
On where we're going to proceed.
Are you suggesting any change in course than where we are right now?
No, I think we're just notifying the contractor of work that remains to be completed. We've done that. We've approved his applications for payments. He presented a final application for payment, and we had to alter that because not all the work was completed. And that's where we are via the contract. We're fulfilling our duties via the contract, and the work is not done.
And we've given him 7 days' notice last week. On the 7th day, he stopped and sent 2 guys for 2 days and then left and hasn't come back until today. There's a lot of stuff that needs to be done so we can get moved in. I mean, just to get the place cleaned up. So, there's some options out there that we need to discuss our next step.
Okay.
Did you have an opportunity to talk to anybody back there today, Mark?
I did not, no.
Okay.
I just drove in and saw that the signs, the police and the fire department sign was being mounted on the building.
Were the signs, did they look, because I know part of the agreement was you guys were supposed to get a copy of them, approve them, change them, or whatever, if there's any
Right.
differences. Do they look,
At glance, they look like they're signs, and they do say the fire and police department.
but there was specific, okay?
And specifically, I have no idea. I mean, I did
in the
not.
right
I
color?
mean, the letters are the right height, that kind of stuff?
It appears so,
Okay,
yeah.
all right. They didn't put in 3-inch letters when they're supposed to have 6-inch, I guess
It's
that's...
supposed to put in a submittal, a submittal
And
being
they never did, right?
submittal to me that verifies that they are meeting the specification, which did not occur.
It's been that way through almost the whole job. And I can vouch for on Mark's side. I mean, there was times that he wanted submittals for the doors so they can make a decision, and that was never gotten to him, and they just ordered the doors and put the doors in. So, I mean, there's many things that happen like this that they didn't follow procedures, and plus we end up getting a lesser quality.
They get lesser money, bottom line.
That's why we're holding up exactly what we're holding up. Okay, so there are some outstanding issues that we need to address.
Okay. Well, we've got a number of other things here to cover, Mark. Are you available for a little while, or?
Yes.
Yeah, we'll need about an hour before we go
Well,
into executive session.
May not be an hour.
Well, maybe a half hour or so.
You
wanna go
know
check
how
out
to
that?
get a hold of me, if you,
Okay.
All right.
if you would.
Yeah. Let me make sure I have your number in this phone, Mark.
Next topic is our water transmission line. The only thing we're wanted to say here is,
Yeah, I've got your mobile here. I'll text you.
as you know, we've discussed this with our local representatives, trying to get some help with the additional cost of going under, boring under Interstate 91. In the course of discussing the project with Senator Rosenberg's staff, there was a strong recommendation that kind of as a backup, other things not working out with what both he and Representative Kokot are trying to do for us legislatively, that we submit a Mass Works grant request for that money. And actually the feeling was it was be a very strong request, given the justification for that going through that area that we're talking about, and the fact that the town had put in X amount of dollars, and this small amount from the state would complement and complete that phase of the project. And anyway, it was a view that we ought to definitely try this at least as a backup. So my recommendation is, or my proposal or motion would be that we turn in a mass grant request for this section of our Phase 1 project to seek funding for the additional costs incurred by going underneath 91.
Jeff, I did talk to Senator Rosenberg last week, and he said that he didn't see from his office all the paperwork or any paperwork that came, all right? And he would like a copy of everything that's out there.
I already gave it to him.
Okay,
I gave-
including the whole package
gave
that
him the whole
Michael
package.
set up?
Gave him the whole
Okay,
package.
so Mary Jane's got it?
Mary Jane, and she's given it to Senator Rosenberg.
Okay. All right.
Senator Rosenberg's people who actually will be doing something, who will be working it.
Okay.
His staff has it.
All right, because he said, at the time when I talked with him, he says he hasn't seen it.
That may be true, but
Okay, so,
the people who do real work
okay.
have it. So, any issue with having a Mass Works grant?
I said so moved.
Okay, is a motion?
Second.
Second, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
So please work that, and that, I mean, you virtually got all the information right out of that
we-
package.
I also talked with him about the Route 5 corridor coming up with water and sewer up from the extension. And he said that he would also make sure that he gets a copy of whatever Mike sends in. He gets a copy also, okay, because he'd like to stay on top of that. I
Well,
would just, because
That's a good,
he did say there was a lot of applications, but our application's been in there for 3 years now, and then this was a prime, we had a prime application in because of the amount of housing that was going to be placed in, and we're still sidetracked, and so I don't know if there's something political going on here or what, but I'd certainly like to get into it and find out what's going on here. Okay, so I think,
well, that's a good point. We have a motion also to resubmit, repackage our Route 5 water sewer Mass Works grant request.
move it forward again.
Is there a motion for that?
Move that we move it forward again and pursue it.
Second.
And
Okay, all
follow.
right. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
So we can dust off last year's and, that's okay, just,
Blow it off a little more so they read Hatfield, will you?
And you know, this time when we submit it, let's submit it, send copies at the same time to Representative Kokot and Senator
And
Rosenberg.
Senator Rosenberg.
And their
And
key
we'll follow
staff
it up with a
people.
personal call.
Next item, this is the building inspector retirement. Mr. Sadowski's submitted his retirement. We've talked about this some months back. Effective at the end of the fiscal year. The only thing we want to talk about today, or I'd like to talk about, is a way ahead on approach. I mean, we have an option. Individuals expressed interest in taking the job in conjunction with Mr. Sadowski continuing to do some part-time work. There's an option, one option that's out there for us, but should we or should we not advertise the position and simply consider that as one option?
I feel to stay clean on the whole thing, we should advertise it totally across the board and
we have this one option.
include that as an option if we need it.
One option to
That's
consider
exactly.
and negotiate.
The applicants can apply for.
Well, we could consider the self-nomination
Sure.
as one of the
Yeah.
Considerations.
I mean, this setup here is, to me, I would try to keep going with this, number one, because Mr. Bartlett is very well knowledgeable of the zoning bylaws, along with Mr. Sadowski. If you get somebody in here from another town, or even from this town that isn't well versed in the zoning bylaws, we're gonna have issues there. I would try this. I mean, I don't see that there is a big, shouldn't be any controversy, I wouldn't imagine. All you're doing is putting an assistant into the permanent position, basically. It's like stepping up a ladder, so.
Well, I question the person, whether it's, I mean, because he's part of the planning board, because he's part of zoning bylaws, and now he's going to enforce it. I don't know if there's a conflict of interest in there, okay? I mean, there's a lot of questions. It just raises a ton of flags with what's going on here. So I don't even know if we can appoint that person at this point in time without getting those answers from the Attorney General's office, okay? And I'm not appointing anybody until I find out exactly what we can do and what we can't do, all right? It's just, I mean, and plus he has a business in town that he works at. All that comes into play, so I don't know if, I don't know. I don't have the answers. The Attorney General's office would have the answers.
Well, we can get it from town council, but I think, the fact that Mr. Bartlett is on the planning board and then would be a building inspector definitely raises some issues. He may have to...
And not only building inspector and zoning enforcement officer.
Well, and the zoning enforcement officer is the big part of it. Yeah, he may have to, recuse himself a lot. It definitely raises some flags.
Well, I'm fully satisfied with the people involved here and the fact that they could make the necessary arrangements to make it work. I'm just suggesting that maybe we ought to put a vacancy announcement out
See what we get.
and see what we get, and consider certainly this and give it fair consideration. Very qualified people or an arrangement here, but
In the meantime, we get the answers that we're looking for this.
exactly.
Yeah. Because if this comes back that we can't do it, then we've already gone ahead and done what we're supposed to do.
Meanwhile, the clock is ticking.
Exactly. So, I'd like to move that we move forward and get it out in the whatchamacallit,
Vacancy.
Advertise, yeah.
Advertise the
Bulletin.
job vacancy.
MMA and so on, just get it out there that we're searching. part-time person.
Oh, no, it's all right.
No, I can't second that. Well, there's a couple of reasons too. Another thing is we may be paying a lot more for our inspector than what we're paying right now if we do that. No, I can't second that, I'm sorry.
Okay. I'll second it. Any other discussion?
No.
Yeah, the point is, certainly, this would be right up there.
No, I mean, I
being
don't,
considered.
no, it's fine, it's just, I have a feeling we're gonna be paying an awful lot more,
Well, no one's saying we
You know,
do anything else
you know,
than
so,
this.
but.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed?
Aye.
Next item, so please draft out a vacancy announcement
Yep.
for a building
I'll take care
inspector,
of that.
zoning enforcement officer, and then put in on the pay range, whatever, to be negotiated or something.
Yeah.
Put a number.
Did you take audit? I missed it. Did you take it out of context?
We're taking it off.
Okay.
Someone was ill this week and didn't draft that out yet.
Okay.
15 budget.
Okay.
Jan doesn't have a,
No, I don't have it.
Yeah. Here's,
I came in and grabbed one.
yeah, you need that. Okay.
How do you want to tackle this?
Yeah, no, I don't want to, I
I've got a
don't,
number of questions on your
Okay.
detailed sheets that I think there might be some typos.
yeah. Since our last meeting, I met with the Finance Committee Subcommittee, and we went over the budget. They instructed me to increase the salary by 2%, just as a starting point. I mean, we were...
Let's be careful.
We were...
We don't take directions as to what the numbers will be from the Finance Committee. With all due respect, we create the budget, and then they comment on the budget. So, go ahead.
So as a point of departure, plug in the 2% and see what that means. I mean, at that point, we were already approximately $45,000 over the levy limit, so obviously that was going to put us even more over the levy limit. So I did that, and then the other development that occurred, the original figure that I was using for the snow and ice deficit was $30,000. Got some more recent information from the accountant and the DPW director, and our estimated snow and ice deficit for this year, which will come out of the tax rate for next year, will be $62,000. So with all that...
Is that right? That's correct.
So with the...
Help me, where does that show up?
Not here. It shows up on another page.
Okay. Oh, with that regard, let's get it over with. In order for us to put this down to tax rate and not have a aligned appropriation, the Board of Selectmen and the Finance Committee have to approve deficit spending for snow and ice. So is there a motion to approve DPW deficit spending in snow and ice for fiscal year 14?
I'll move that we have it, but I'm questioning the dollar figure, if it's accurate.
We're not, all we have, we're not,
Oh, we're just declaring there's a,
we're
Okay.
we're in essence acknowledging we have to spend more than
Yeah,
What was
I move that
budgeted.
we acknowledge that.
Should we hold off? Only because.
No, we're not going to do a number. We're just
Okay.
authorizing,
All right, okay.
because he's already blown through.
That's exactly right.
He just got a load of salt and, so. Okay.
I'll second.
So second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, now we still need that same vote from the Finance Committee. Okay.
Which is news to me, but
I know.
that's neither here nor there. Yeah, on the number,
If anybody's interested, read the latest Department of Revenue bulletin on fiscal year 15 budget issues.
That was last year, we did the same thing. I believe we had to do the same thing
I
last year.
didn't realize that the Finance Committee had
no,
to.
that's news to me.
It always came in front of the board.
It was
but
just,
not the
just the
finance.
board.
Yeah, on the snow and ice deficit figure, the town accountant's latest reconciliation on that was $43,000 and change. And in talking with the DPW director, he said, well, you can add another $18,000 on top of that, because we just got a load of salt. So that's $62,000.
Well, just to clarify that, is the load of salt was ordered 6 weeks ago, and due to the shortage, they just sent it now. So that was all back-ordered salt.
Yeah, all the communities were having difficulty getting salt. It wasn't available. So that leaves us, close to $90,000.
What was the dollar, excuse me, Paul?
Yeah.
What was the dollar figure on that load of salt?
It was $18,000.
How much?
18.
18,000?
That was back-ordered to restock the shed.
Because if we don't use that salt, then that should automatically move forward and take it from our regular expenses. I don't think it should be added into a deficit.
We're in deficit already, prior to that. We're $42,000 in deficit going in between materials and labor.
But if we don't use it, it would be into next year.
No.
No,
we
no,
are-
the bill
Bills
is, it's
incurred.
going to be paid this year. It's part of the deficit.
Part of deficit.
So anyways, without getting into a lot of gory detail, that's where we stand at the moment. When we meet with the Finance Committee, which is, tentatively scheduled for April 8th at 6:30, then, we can start going through the line by line. What I'd like to concentrate on right now is the warrant.
Can I, just a couple things?
Go ahead.
Well, here, I must have one. Page 1 of your spreadsheet. If we're looking for money, well, all right, we can save that. Well, line 4, Selectmen's Emergency Fund,
Yeah.
$500. I mean, if we're, how much are you're saying we're behind overall? $90,000?
$90,000, yeah.
All right, there's 500 there. Down here, certification.
Wait a minute. You don't want to delete those.
Well, we got to come up with $90,000.
But what I'm saying is, that line is for an emergency.
I know.
You don't take away from that line other than, you can leave $100 in it, but don't take 500.
I see what you
Don't
mean.
take the whole thing.
Well, just take some cut of that. Down here in certification, well, first of all, we don't apply a COLA increase to the certification. The bylaw says it's $1,000.
Yeah, actually, Louise already pointed that out to me.
Okay, and then, but I thought one of them was not going to get it, not going to be certified.
Well, you've got 3 offices.
I know, but one of them
Okay.
won't qualify this year.
I don't know, I don't think the, whatchamacallit qualifies either.
Well, there might be a couple thousand, 1,000 or 2,000 there.
Assessors don't qualify, and you got the treasurer doesn't qualify. The only one I think that qualifies is the tax collector.
I just, it's just a
Right.
matter of
Well, I can find
a
out
few
what's going
$1,000s,
on.
yeah, as to who qualified. A question under, I didn't understand the number on the planning board,
Which number, 25?
for the salaries. How did it get to?
I'd have to look back at last year's,
Is that,
but I think we voted them for each meeting.
okay, all right, I'm looking.
Oh, no, it says each
Okay,
member.
Okay, it's okay, I guess.
Yeah, I'm sure that figure there does not necessarily register with the rest of it, because, not everything has been updated.
Okay. Town clock is in DPW's maintenance, right?
Correct, yeah.
Not just, we'll come back to town council, line 18. On line 35, it says fiscal year 14, your fiscal year 14 salary, I can hardly see this.
124,
And 14
101.
is the same as what you're showing in the 15 line. Look your first column.
Oh, the salary is
14.
103.
Oh, yeah.
And then it doesn't reflect
No, you're right.
Your-
Yeah, and I don't know why
your
that
2% or whatever factor you're using.
103, 241.
happened. Yeah, okay.
Okay, and where is the CTY charge?
That is in emergency management, that's why,
So is it in there?
yeah.
Okay, all right. And line,
It's supposed to be, let me look.
Well, we want to make sure that it's
yeah,
there.
it's
Yeah.
$3,000 a year, I believe.
Yeah.
I just wasn't sure.
I gotta,
Okay, the other one is line 49, winter roads. The number's too low. You remember, we got to equal what we spent. And so we spent $12,142 in 14, we appropriated. You can't then do 12,120. It's got to be equal to or greater.
yeah.
So make those numbers consistent. Where else? Oh, on line 61, the next page. Why did recreation go up $3,000? I didn't understand that.
Yeah, that was there.
In 14,
Oh,
I'm looking at,
It looks like it stayed the same from 14 and 15.
no. Well, no, look in your second column,
Well,
expenses. It's 5,000, and over in 15, it's 8,000.
As a total.
537. What?
I got, let me look. I'm right here.
Can you see?
Yeah, it's
Right here,
27,
right here,
27,
right here.
27.
Oh, I
Forget the request.
And that one's
No.
5850.
it's a transposition problem. I transposed the wrong number.
Okay, it was a
The
test.
expenses is 5850.
Yeah,
Okay, the numbers, so it's about 3,000 there.
yeah.
I'm not sure where you're getting the 3,000,
Right here.
Jeff. Because this number, this
Yeah.
5850 is the same as this one here.
No, but that's not the column you're looking at. Where is it? 8,000. Here's the recommended. Where's expenses? He's got 8,000.
Expenses right here.
He's got 8,000 there.
Oh, it
It's
should be-
it's only, over here, forget this. It's
I
over
see
here.
what they did.
No, forget requested. Here's what they had.
This should be 5850.
Right. And
So
so.
that should be 5850.
Exactly,
Right.
Yeah.
That's where you're seeing it. Okay.
Yeah.
So
Now I got it.
there's 3,000 more. That's 3,000 here, 3,000 there.
Pretty soon.
All adds up.
Makes
Yeah.
the difference, absolutely.
The Smith Academy project, where is that?
That's, I mean, that's this year.
That should be under articles, shouldn't it? Articles aren't even listed on here.
Well, no, there is no Smith, I mean, we've got a design project going on, that's it.
I know, but we have to sign all the paperwork committing to, as I understood all that paperwork, and we've had this discussion before, the town commits to the whole amount. And we get reimbursed back in $50,000 increments as we make expenses.
But that's on the article.
Yeah, but that won't, that's an article, that will have no effect on this budget.
All right.
It'll affect.
Well, it will,
It'll affect the
if
following
it's
year's
accepted,
budget.
it will.
Well, yeah.
Okay.
No, okay, it won't affect 15, it'll affect 16.
Right. It'll affect next year's budget. Well, will it? Okay, I guess the
That's-
question is, will
yeah.
it? Because if we get approval, let's say in July, we get approval, work could start as soon as
Oh, they want
September.
to start this summer.
So it would be in this budget, absolutely.
Well,
So it will affect this budget.
Actually, they're holding up when we have to commit until after our town meeting.
right.
Right.
Excuse me, gentlemen, I have to
I
leave.
know.
I have an appointment.
Don't touch your wire. Sorry. Good luck.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's nothing needs to be here.
My understanding as of 11:30 today is, that project will not affect next year's budget. It'll affect the following year's budget.
Okay.
Provided that it gets approved at town meeting.
Well, I'm
Yeah.
confident it'll be approved.
Explain to me how your reasoning to that, Paul, okay? Because like Jeff said, they want to start immediately.
Yeah, but it's what we're talking about, it's going to be a bond. We're going to float a bond, and the bond repayment will not happen until 2016.
If 2015 is going to happen in July 1st, okay? So July 1st, if you get the approval July 15th or August 1st to do the job, town meeting votes that they're going to do it, so everything is all set to go. You put it out to bid, you get everything going, the job starts in September, okay? All of a sudden, you ask for payment because the job's going to be done in September. You ask for payment, so now the money's got to come in from somewhere, okay, to pay for that, and you're looking at interest. That's in September, October, probably by December, your payment is going to be due. So how do you figure into next year?
Let's say we float the bond in July, the repayment isn't going to be due until the following July.
But there's
And
money that's got to be,
That's the next fiscal year.
money has to be paid the contractor.
No.
That's got
Okay.
nothing to do
All
with
right.
anything
Well,
here.
I think I understand what you're saying. Yeah.
We borrow the money, we got the money.
Our
We don't have to
repayment.
start repaying it until the following fiscal year.
We don't have to pay as we go.
So what we're doing is we're accruing the interest and paying the interest in the new fiscal year. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, the first year,
The bill
Yeah.
still
The
has
first
to
year-
be paid.
yeah. We'll get the money, but we
yeah.
don't have to repay until, what he's saying,
It'll
the
be
first
the-
payment won't be until
A year
following
later.
fiscal year.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it won't affect,
I had a little
Affect
hard
this.
time understanding how this
That's okay.
contract is going to get paid.
well, I had a mental block on that myself. I'm sorry, Paul, go ahead.
Oh, so are you all set?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, well, yeah, before we get into the warrant, just a couple of
Oh, how about this page here? Mm-hmm. Oh, or did you have more on that?
Well, I want to talk about a couple of things specifically. We don't necessarily have to deal with this today, but the whole issue with town council.
Yes.
As we've just, I've sent out an email to everybody.
Just for town folks, I got a call early yesterday morning, town council was in the hospital. He's subsequently been released, saying he was under the weather, but essentially we'd need to have coverage, legal coverage for town council function between now and through town meeting. He was really not going to be available. He offered to help in that. In any event, town administrator has made arrangements with another firm to cover us through town meeting.
Yeah, as soon as I got the word about Bill, I made a phone call with a firm I used to work with, who that I thought were very good. So I brought them on board to review the warrant. It's in their possession now. They're reviewing it. But I did pose the question as to whether, because Jeff and I had a discussion yesterday about whether or not they would actually need to be appointed. But I got the word back for, particularly for town meeting purposes, they must be appointed by the board as temporary special town council or whatever we want to call it. So we don't have to do that today, but we'll have to do it.
Well, if we have to do it, let's just do it now. So
That would be my suggestion.
What's the
Brackett and Lucas.
What is it?
Brackett and Lucas.
I move that we appoint Brackett and Lucas for temporary town council.
I'll second that. Any other discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Also, at the same time, what I'd like to bring up that we probably, at this point in time, we should put an RFP out for town council, and maybe look at what's out there and see who would submit anything of interest, even, O'Neill's office again. I mean, we haven't put that out for years and years and years. And because I'm not sure that even they're going to be considered how much further they want to go forward. Okay.
Can I make an alternate suggestion, but kind of along the same line? Bill wanted to talk about potentially a different model. And let's first have a discussion about what are we looking for? Do we want a one-stop shop? Or are we interested in someone that would take personnel law for us, someone that would take support the assessors?
I like one-stop shopping, so to speak.
Like a Copeland and Page model.
Like a Copeland and Page. They have a number of attorneys throughout the state, or other big firms that have enough information, so when there's a problem, they don't have to go and look it up. They can just check with their resources right there, and they come back with an answer. They might be a little more money in hourly, but they're certainly going to give you your answers much quicker.
It doesn't cost us anything. Was it RFQ?
RFQ, yeah.
Request for qualifications. It doesn't cost us anything and doesn't require any commitment.
We send out an RFQ, review responses, do interviews, and the board makes a decision.
So, I'd like to move that we move forward on that and put an RFP out and see.
No, RFQ.
RFQ, I'm sorry. So it's not request for proposals then?
It's a request for qualifications.
Qualifications, okay. And move forward on it and see what we get, okay? It's just, we're all getting older, and so there's nobody there to replace Mr. O'Neill, okay? So I think we ought to look at what the future of Hatfield is going to be and open it up.
I'll second it. It doesn't close any doors.
No, it doesn't close anything.
Bill bounces back, fine, we're still in the mix.
Okay. Because right now, I mean, we're paying for litigation, we're paying for different attorneys for different jobs and stuff. When, if you got one-stop shopping, sometimes you can get a good retainer that they would cover XXXX, and then that's part of the retainage. So, and when we lay it out with a contract, we can spell out what we want the retainer to reflect. Okay, the retainer is not only to retain him, but I know in the very beginning, back in years ago, what we did is we set the retainer as you were paid the retainer, but that included documentation to prepare town meeting documents and to be at town meeting and to support the board on any questions that didn't require research. So that's what you got for your money, okay? Not just an outright stipend to put you on board here, okay? So, you know, there's some things that we can ask for in the retainer that might work to that advantage here.
Well, we'll start. It doesn't close any doors.
Right.
But you might notify the other staff about engaging Brackett and Lucas as
Yeah.
temporary town council.
Send a notice around to everybody.
well,
So they
all
know who to be
departments.
calling.
Well, they should
Yeah.
call through, they should automatically go through us before they call anybody else anyway,
That's true.
okay? It wouldn't be a bad idea to send a memo around that anybody that needs to use the attorney contacts your office first and gets approval
Yep,
to move forward.
yep.
Okay, you're on again.
Okay, one more thing. In my discussions with the Finance Committee, they have expressed to me a strong desire to look at the water and sewer rates. They think it's time that is revisited, particularly the sewer rates. You know, for a lot of the sewer debt, it's all being, at least in the proposed budget as it stands, a lot of the sewer project debt is being covered by taxation. They would like to see more of it being covered from the sewer enterprise fund. I talked with the water superintendent the other day and asked him if he knew, because I talked to Phil about it and said, well, the sewer rates haven't been changed since I've been here, and that's 5 years. So I talked to the water superintendent, and he said it was 6 years ago that the sewer rates were increased. So I know some of the members of the Finance Committee feel strongly that those rates need to be looked at and possibly increased.
If we're going to increase any rates, I would certainly like some kind of a cost accounting for the department to find out exactly what we're paying before we start increasing.
We're not going to decide on rates today.
No.
What we are going to look at, though, is we'll begin a discussion on it. What we have here is a summary of sewer and water operating costs. They don't cover capital. So, put another way, this understates the costs really that should be attributed to the sewer and water enterprise funds. And on the next couple pages, Michael has just outlined what the existing revenue is from our current sewer rate, what a 5% increase might look like in terms of revenue, what a 10% increase might look like in revenue. And then he did the same thing on existing rates with respect to water, what a 5% increase would look like, and other options, 3.5 and 7.4. But the bottom line is our current rate is virtually not covering current operating costs.
And that's my question, Jeff, okay? It's not covering operating cost, okay?
Well, it sure
But
is.
are we operating in the most efficient manner?
And
That's
we're
my
not
question.
covering projected capital requirements.
Right, okay? You know, I mean, right down, we used to have a cost analysis of how much it costs per gallon to actually take, like a sewer department, what it costs us to run that plant and per gallon through that plant and come up with a dollar figure. Frank Motika had those figures back when he was running that.
We have those.
We have.
Okay, so those are the kind of figures that I'm looking for, to see exactly what it costs us per gallon to run that plant, all right? There's other things that I brought up. I brought up the fact that the sludge that comes from pumping septic systems and stuff like that. You heard Mike Oles himself. He said that's where it costs us a lot more money to process the sludge. We should be making sure that pumping is being charged accordingly. All right, I know a couple years ago, we upped our rates, and then all of a sudden, everybody else in the area is upgrading their rates because they knew that, you know, it should be a lot more money. So I don't have a problem looking at what it's actually costing us to get rid of the sludge versus, you know, what's coming in and charge accordingly. So whoever's pumping septic systems are going to have to pay the upgraded price. You know, why should the people on the sewer pay for that kind of a service? Okay, when it should be, you know, make sure that we're getting what we're supposed to be getting from the pumping, and not just because Sunderland is getting X amount of dollars. I'm looking to put it towards what it really costs us.
Well, again,
So, and that goes for water, it goes the whole bit, okay? I mean, when you can put it towards specifics, okay, on how your operation is, can you fine tune your operation? There's always room for fine tuning somewhere, always. And that's what I think we have to look at before we start raising any fees, okay?
well, we could fine tune a lot, and we still don't fine tune away $400,000.
So,
Just remember one thing, okay? When this water and sewer enterprise came on board, I specifically told the people that at town meeting that this was going to come back to haunt us, okay? Because we took it out of the budget, made that hole, and then all of a sudden, that hole was filled, the gap was filled because he used the money in other parts of the town, okay, to satisfy the budget and to get up with into the levy limits and so on. And now, it's not only the taxes are going up, but the water and sewer are going up again. And, you know, I think it's wrong for us to start moving up on rates when we should be looking at, are we most efficient in our operation? That's what I'm asking for.
Well, we can certainly, and we always do, I believe, look at how well we're doing. And
We had the same conversation last year. Maybe we ought to just get a committee together and have somebody, get some people that know cost analysis and let them go through these things and see if we can come up and fine tune our operation.
But right now, we're not even fully covering our operating cost, much less covering down the capital requirements. And that's the capital requirements of what's been going on to the tax rates.
And we know
that should be contained in here. So there should be enough revenue coming in to take not only operating expenses, but some percentage of projected capital requirements. So we'd minimize that impact on.
So maybe we have to cut back and put half the water meters in this year instead of all the water meters that he's proposing.
Yeah, but I'm not sure that's a cost-saving measure when actually you put the new meters in, you can ride by and do it more quickly.
Well,
I think on this direct, indirect cost page, though, that this debt for the RBC payment is not right. I'm almost positive that RBC payment is not coming out of the sewer enterprise fund.
He got that from the treasurer, but
Because according to the treasurer this morning, that all 3 RBC payments will be coming out of the sewer retained earnings, and I don't think that's correct. I thought that everything was passed at town meeting to come out of taxation, so
yeah.
I think that 15.7 goes away. And the other question that I have is that the debt for the water plant payment, which is $95,000 with the 40-year loan per year, that last year, $40,000 of that came out of taxation. So that would come off of here to bring that number down. But what is, I wasn't here when that whole structure was first set up, where how much would be taking out of taxation as they moved along. I thought through the grapevine talk, it was a 7-year plan. I don't know that.
Yeah, I wasn't here when that happened either, so I don't have the answer to that. Certainly can find out, do some research and find that out.
Well, we're not going to close on it here today, but yes, we recognize we need to do something. We want to do it in a thoughtful manner. We're not trying to do this.
Plus, just to highlight something is that when Paul and I sat with the committee, that the question was, why did it drop off 17% as far as revenue coming in? And it was, as you well know, it's due to weather conditions.
Right.
I mean, you can't guarantee
Every
a
year is
certain
different.
number. I mean,
Every
if you
year
have
is
a very
different.
dry summer, you're going to very well get a lot more money.
You're right.
But if you have that wet summer, which happened, the revenues dropped 17%, and that's a big hit.
The other question I have is, I noticed standpipes around town, okay? We have meters on them.
Yes.
How does that work?
They charge agricultural rate.
Okay, but my point is there a key that you put in there, or is there a card that you put in there that all the farmers have?
Yep.
Okay, so it's controlled by some kind of an apparatus that tells how many gallons going onto your account. So there's no way anybody can take the water for free?
No.
Okay.
Well, how about we do something for our next session? You've got some numbers here. You're going to refine those,
I will
clean them up
Yeah.
with the accountant and the treasurer. We can go back and the other thing is we ought to be, when we come back to this, we need to be talking about things like what model do we want to use? Do we want to move to a tiered approach where high volume users have a different rate than residential users? Do we want to have different rates for summer and winter? A higher rate in summer, a lower rate winter, to help manage use? Do we want to simplify things by making the sewer rate simply a percentage of the water rate?
Okay, keep this in mind, Jeff, that the water cost us X amount of dollars to treat for the whole town, okay? Drinking water we're talking in this case, okay? So it doesn't matter how you look at it, the cost is the same across the board. If I drink the water, if you drink the water, if the horse drinks the water, they're drinking the same water.
Yeah, but we have
okay?
different rates.
But what I'm saying is,
The horse
to me, I think it should be all one rate across the board. All one rate,
All right, well,
everybody
that's-
pays the same, period. That's what I think is fair for everybody, okay? There's no subsidizing with anybody, because that's the way I feel. I just feel it's fair for everybody, looking at this day and age, and everybody that's kind of cringed their numbers, and if it's fair for everybody, then everybody will have to really toe the mark and make sure that they're using water appropriate. Okay, so I mean, that's my feeling.
Well, that could be one option is a flat rate.
Yeah, I'm just
And
thinking,
not tiered rates.
when we have this discussion, would it be good to have Mike Ohl here?
Yeah, he will
Absolutely.
come.
Yeah.
Yes.
He'll come.
I
And then
know,
what percentage is logical to embed for your capital requirements? We have a pretty good layout for the next, 8 or 9 years still on the water side for what the capital requirements are. We don't have that out on the sewer side, but look at the water transmission line. Just that piece, 2.8 million, and we're
Yeah.
$400,000 short. So that doesn't even get it to the town center. It doesn't take care of North Street, doesn't take care of King Street, doesn't expand the sewer system. I mean, we've got
Millions.
There's just a lot,
millions.
there's a lot
We're not gonna-
of work to do.
not going to do it all at once, but, some incremental piece, what's a logical chunk that ought to be embedded in the cost structure, or the revenue stream, rather. So there's not the big spikes for our residents and their tax bills.
So so there's a couple of things that I feel, I mean, before the rate structures and stuff like that we need to make sure that we are operating at most efficient, okay? That's all I got to say.
It gets back to things like our processing water in the Colonial Acres, where we know we're supposed to.
Well, I guess my point is, if you have an independent person, people, or group, three committee, looking at this stuff here, then come back with a report, that would be the most fair. Somebody, neutral parties, coming in, looking at the situation, getting the figures, and coming up with for the whole town, okay? And looking at the situation. Then I feel comfortable saying, we really have to go up on the rates, or we don't have to go up the rates, we're going to cut this because of this reasons, okay? That's what I'm looking for, all right? Because year after year after year, we just, look at increasing.
Well, that's another thing, we haven't, and the Finance Committee's been
Well,
after
2 years
us,
ago we
rightly
did.
so.
2 years ago,
for
we
not-
took a
For
big
not
jump.
even increasing to the 2.5%.
Well,
Years ago, you went up from 345 on the water to 365. So
Right.
you went up 20 cents.
and then we also said that we should also go up every year by,
We
what is
haven't.
it?
We haven't. So
Okay,
that
we
was
haven't
2 years
gone up,
ago.
so
And the sewer rates haven't been adjusted for 6 years.
Okay, even though we voted it to happen. We voted on that. I recall voted to increase the rates.
I thought that was just
Prior
a
to my watch,
recommendation from the Finance Committee to go up 2% a year.
I thought we all talked about that, and we agreed that it should go up on a yearly
Well,
basis.
We apparently haven't, never voted to that effect.
Okay.
This board hasn't,
Well, they haven't, according to Tony, they haven't changed in 6 years.
yeah.
Okay.
Haven't changed them since I.
Precedes me, so. All right, well, let's come back to that and and we need to sit down and chat about focus of what we're looking for Mike, so he
Yeah.
doesn't waste any time. I'm sorry.
Okay, let's go on with the warrant. and
All right, well,
finish up here.
yeah. There's only a couple of things I want to, there's not, I'm focusing on, budgetary issues here. If you go to page 4, Article 15, this is, money for the 350th anniversary. I was told by the town clerk that, you cannot use town funds for something like this, and for the celebration for the 325th, that was all private money that was raised. There's like $4,800 left there. So, I'll have to get a read on that, so that question is,
Didn't you have some concern, Jeff, that on the
Actually-
tricentennial or something like that, there was
Actually,
money
the
there?
law does permit us to use appropriated funds
Only on specific years.
specific,
for centennial celebrations. There's a Massachusetts General Law that
Okay.
covers everything.
yeah.
But
Only for
it-
centennial.
But it says centennial, and Mike was going to go back and check, has this been interpreted or whatever by DOR to mean that we could do it for like the 350th as
Okay.
opposed to centennial. But centennials are clear, you can use appropriated funds, not an issue.
Yeah.
And you can start 5 years in advance like we're talking about here.
Right.
But the question is, can you use it for a 350th, not a 400th?
Yeah. Well, I can,
So we're sorting that out.
I can get a read on that. The only, I think, we go to page, where is it? Page 5, the next page. Well, it's called Article 24 for right now. The $50,000 for the sidewalk improvements.
We're just going to take that off. I
Yeah,
guess.
all right.
We're 100, what? How much are we short, 80 or 90,000?
87,000.
87,000.
And
We
I
talked about potentially using Chapter 90 if we had to.
Yeah.
You voted to take that off last meeting.
Yeah,
We didn't vote it.
Well, you did, and I took it out. What you voted on was that it wasn't going to come from taxation.
That's correct.
But, you know,
It'd come from
the
Chapter
idea,
90,
the
if
idea
you took it.
wasn't entirely dropped, you know, it could have come out of free cash, it could have
Yeah.
come out of
Yeah, we didn't specify.
Chapter 90.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we're
But
moving to
just-
take it out.
We're just getting it.
I move that we
getting-
take out Article 20, your 24 on page
Yeah.
5
Yeah.
of this warrant.
Second. All in favor?
All right.
Not 25.
It's
It's
24.
hazardous materials.
24.
24.
24.
Yeah. So,
Is it 24?
24.
What page are you at?
Yep. On page 5.
page 5.
Article 24.
Okay, I got confused with all these hash. Okay, got it. Yeah.
Scrubbing that
All
one.
right, so there's a motion to delete.
50,000 for sidewalk improvements as far as vote to appropriate, because it can come from Chapter 90.
Okay, I'll second. Any other discussion? No. All in favor? Aye.
Right.
Another change that I made from the last meeting, particularly, you know, since we're in the hall, is the following article. It's before Article 25. It's on page 6. At the top of the page, the article regarding membership in the Franklin Regional Transit Authority. I'm proposing that whatever that figure is, I'm guesstimating it's going to be around $5,000 that come out of free cash as opposed to taxation. I mean, I have had discussions with, you know, some of the property owners of the medical buildings, and, you know, there was a willingness there to, that they would come up with that money, but, you know, that hasn't been formulated yet, so.
The way this worked last year, and it worked fine last year, and I don't know why we're starting to change things around here, because last year, at the Finance Committee meetings, we had all the money articles put in a list. And we went through the budget, got where the budget was, knew what the budget was, and then anticipated if this were to go forward, where are we going to get the money from? And then, was it an article that we're going to keep or throw out? If you recall, that's what we did last year, and that's not what we're doing this year, okay? So, kind of like putting the cart before the horse here, when we should be dealing with the financial picture before we start dealing with what's going on here. You can put it as a placeholder, but, you know, to decide
yeah.
where and how much money is coming, you're not going to know that, whether even we're going to keep that article. Remember, we right up to the end, okay?
Well, we committed to exploring this with the business owners.
Yeah,
And.
but let it go in the pool of articles.
Paul's been on this since last May or June and been unable to get a number from the Franklin Regional Transit folks. I don't understand their issue about they're having some problem with their methodology, but as best he can determine, it's roughly $5,000. And then the other thing is the source, and he's talked to the folks, and
There was a willingness.
there's a willingness apparently that
yeah.
they may pick up the entire tab.
Yeah.
Now, if those are the kind of things that you want, and it's a $5,000 thing, you look back at, okay, the assessors may have in their, what do you call their account, reserve account there.
Yeah.
Overlay
Okay,
surplus.
overlay account. They might have $5,000. So what you do is you move from the overlay account into this article, okay, X amount of dollars. Instead of trying to find out of free cash or whatever, you know you can pull it from here or there. And that's how, if you really want to support this article, that's how, one way to support it, with money that's sitting somewhere in the background, and whether we're going to use it or not, okay? So, you know, and I hear what you're saying, and I agree with what you're saying, but with what we did last year, when we put all the articles in one page, and then we sat at town, you know, with the Finance Committee and everybody and discussed the
Well, what
whole
you're talking
budget.
about, when we sit down with the Finance Committee, we ought to have, here are projected revenues. sources.
Yep.
And then here's the uses. Here's how we,
And
then-
here's the articles,
and then
proposed articles.
what's the revenue, the sources versus the uses, what's the delta? Are we okay, or do we have a problem?
Right.
And then go back and make the trades.
So if you clearly want this article to work, I would recommend taking it from an overlay or taking it from
Yeah,
whatever
I don't know if there's
and putting it there.
much in there, because we used quite a
We
bit.
used last year.
Yeah, I.
Well,
sometimes
don't
I have
forget,
to check
every
with
year
Jenny.
that they can release money on a yearly basis, depending on how much they kept for that year. And I don't know what they've been keeping. There's years that I remember keeping, $60,000, okay, because we had to deal with CNS and stuff like that. So, I don't know if that money's been released yet.
So you're just keeping this here as a placeholder right now,
Yeah.
and the
Yeah.
source is
Yeah,
TBD.
yeah, clearly it's not going to come out of taxation.
Right, and what I'm saying is, if we truly want an article here, use that methodology to get it, okay, instead
Yeah.
of
Well, it'll be
grabbing
pretty
it.
simple this year, because quite frankly, there's not much for warrant articles, because we don't have any money.
Yeah, exactly,
So, there it is.
okay. So really, this is
So
it then, huh?
that's all I need. That's all I need for
Just
now.
those couple things?
Yeah.
Just a style point, why, is there a reason why you put in the hazardous materials and waste recovery bylaw in the text, or is just, as opposed to it's available for review at the town clerk's office or something? I mean,
Yeah, only because it's relatively short, as opposed to being like a 5-page document.
I only ask that in terms of consistency throughout the document, because
Right.
I'm sure there's a number of others, so you're not going to,
Question that I think we're done with the
Yep.
articles.
Yep.
Question I have on the budget is, I asked Bill to put in, and I haven't seen it, and I just want to make sure that it's still there, for the hazardous waste coordinator. He was supposed to put in a sum of money into his account, and I don't know if that was done or it wasn't done. Can you guys tell me if it was
That hasn't been
done?
inserted yet, no.
Is there any reason
that-
why it's not? If it's
because
not,
there's
we're
been
not
no
going to move forward.
justification for it.
There's no justification?
No.
Okay, so when that means when somebody gets hurt in this town hall and there's no record of it, who gets
No,
sued?
for example, they brought over, well,
Yeah,
well,
that's,
Board of Health had
there's
it for
got to be,
years,
no, the Board of Health does not have that under control. No way in hell is the Board of Health, and
I know you
what
did.
you guys did was wrong back when you shoved it to the Board of Health and said, you guys got this, and they didn't understand what the process was. I'm not stupid, I understand what the process is, and we are not the hazardous waste coordinator. We will deal with the hazards out there that are out there, but we're certainly not going to take and spend 1,000 hours keeping track of everybody's chemicals throughout this whole town. That's not our job, okay?
Yeah, unfortunately, it was assigned to the Board of Health, who did nothing with it for years.
You're right, because they understood that, they thought, and I asked Ellen about it, and she was under the impression that if an emergency came up, they would deal with it at that time. Because that's what she understood, how it worked. She didn't
Right.
either go and explore it, or was told differently than what it actually is. I know what it is, because I did the job down in Hartford. I understand it. This is not something for the Board of Health. This is something for emergency management. This is something for the fire, police, underneath that organization, because
Right.
it deals with chemicals and
That's
monitoring
fine, no,
itself.
they have the responsibility, that's clear. The request had been made earlier about how other communities handle it in the area, and virtually most of them is under the fire department, the fire chief, or some member of the fire handles it.
And I asked Bill to
Number
make
two, when we merged the ambulance with the fire department, we weren't creating additional headroom for staff positions. That is, we have Bill, and then we have a deputy for the ambulance. Earlier, when the ambulance stood alone, it had a manager and essentially a deputy. So they have eliminated that former deputy position, and there's plenty of money in that line to cover down this requirement.
Okay, if there is, I don't have a problem with it. If there's not, I want to make sure that we protect the town in this case, because I understand what how the process works, I understand
So
it.
we've not increased their budget, we just let
Their
what's in
existing
the
budget.
ambulance go over there, but they have no requirement for that. You know, we weren't, when we merged the two, we weren't trying to just add overhead. So there's a position there for, that there was some money against in earlier budgets that is available.
Well, I'm going to ask Bill to make sure that that money is there, and if it's not, then I
Well, we'll put
think
it
we ought
there.
to,
Well, we're not going to add to it, but we'll help him.
we'll figure out how
move
it's
it over
going to
to
happen
him.
here. Because that's something that has to happen in this town to protect our town, okay? Our offices, starting right from us, okay?
Yeah, it can't be a cold start. There must be software out there that handles this.
Well, that's exactly right.
Existing federal reporting or state reporting.
Yeah.
We ought to be able to piggyback. Can't imagine it's that volatile in terms of changing. It's pretty
I mean,
static.
there's a
so-
lot of work to the whole process, a lot of work, okay? Just tracking and monitoring the chemicals throughout the whole town. I mean, every workplace or business, you have to have the proper documentation, they have to have MSDS
But those
sheets.
requirements are already out there.
They're out there, but we have nothing in, we're supposed to monitoring them all right
Okay.
here.
Yeah, but I'm saying,
Okay, we don't.
we're not creating up a whole structure to make that happen. Those
That's already
MSD
happening
yeah,
out in the
exactly.
field. Or is it happening? I guess that's my question.
So
People
it's-
need to go out and check the records, make sure that they are updating them
It's
and
just
stuff like
an
that.
administrative kind of function.
My question to Phil, put you on the spot, Phil, are all our MSDS sheets right up to snuff?
They are, right at the town garage and at Tony's place and at the sewer plant, yes.
Okay, so
We have
everybody's,
we have a file of each one.
everybody's got them on file. Do we have them here in the town hall?
No, they're not here in the town hall, to my knowledge.
Okay. Now, we used to have them, I don't know where they are, but they're really outdated. So, but that, we really need them here, because if somebody gets hurt, they need to look at an MSDS sheet and see what the solution
It'll
is
be
to
all
take care
scanned,
of the
put
problem.
online.
Well, that's one way. But,
I mean, it doesn't.
okay. That's all I have at this point. I'm really concerned about that. Just want to protect us. Okay.
Old business?
And go into executive
I'm
session?
good.
No, well, we need to address this advisory committee letter that we got long ago, February
Oh.
21st, from Ag Advisory.
Yeah, actually,
Look at building permit fees charged for agricultural structures, buildings, and greenhouses.
I talked to Bob Wagner yesterday, as a matter of fact, and, because, yeah, he originally wanted to, come before the board today. But I
Well,
didn't
I just
think-
want to
yeah.
acknowledge that we've got
Yeah.
this, and our building inspector, Mr. Sadowski's been on vacation, and
Right.
and
So
when,
I told Bob next meeting,
okay.
providing that, I said, when we have the discussion, the building inspector needs to be here.
Yeah.
So provided that Stanley's here as well.
Well, yeah, that's, with regard to the town council support, we've got this thing pending with the legal review of the Mass School Building Authority package.
That's right, yeah.
So
Yeah.
that needs to get out to them, and I don't know what else
Yep.
beside,
Well, I'm glad you reminded me on that.
and the question about the Finance Committee, looking at the snow and ice, that was, we were talking about Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 44, Section 31D. Anyone's
There it is, news to me.
interested?
Is that new, Jeff? Is that clause new?
No, it's old. Remote IT, Did you look at that?
I haven't looked into that.
I mean, it sounds like a,
I mean, I kind of glanced at
some
it.
information concerning remote IT director that the Department of Revenue is kicking off for very small towns.
Yeah.